That basket had belonged to my mother. I did not tell Lauren that. One Saturday morning, I was making tea
This was
when Lauren
supposed to
came
be my
downstairs
night, and you
wearing a cream
always
blazer
managed to
and
ruin
gold earrings.
everything.
She had that tight expression she wore when she was about to be impressive somewhere. "I have people coming by it too," she said. "All right," I answered.
Mom, is that you?
"Would you like me to make
Yes,
something?"
baby.
No.
It is.
Please, don't cook. She opened the refrigerator, then closed it without taking anything. It's not that kind of meeting. I knew what that meant. It meant she did not want the house smelling like cornbread or cinnamon or anything that reminded people she had been raised by a woman who cooked from memory. So I nodded. "I'll stay out of the way." She paused, maybe hearing something in my voice, maybe not. I didn't mean it like that, but she had meant it exactly like that. That afternoon, I sat in my room while Lauren entertained 2 gallery board members and a donor named Patricia. Their laughter floated through the vent above my bed. I could hear wine glasses clicking. I could hear Lauren using her professional voice, the one that rose and fell like music. Then I heard my name. "My mother lives with me now," Lauren said. "Oh, that's sweet," one woman replied. Lauren gave a little laugh. "It's been an adjustment. She's from a different generation. Very traditional. Very sentimental." The pause after that word was small, but I felt it. Sentimental. Another little box to put me in. I looked around my room at the narrow bed, the lamp with the cracked shade, the closet full of clothes Lauren said I should donate, and I wondered when I had become someone my daughter had to explain. That evening after the guests left, Lauren knocked once and opened my door before I answered. "They loved the house," she said. "I'm glad." She looked at my lap. I had been mending a loose hem on one of my old navy dresses. "Mom." That evening, after the guests left, Lauren knocked once and opened my door before I answered. "They loved the house," she said. "I'm glad." She looked at my lap. I had been mending a loose hem on one of my old navy dresses. "Mom," she said, "do you still need to do that by hand? I can just buy you a new dress." I ran my fingers over the thread. "This one fits me. It looks dated. It's comfortable." She exhaled. "Comfortable isn't always the goal." I looked at her then. Really looked. My daughter standing there in clothing that cost more than my monthly Social Security check, telling me comfort was not the goal of a woman my age. "What is the goal, Lauren?" I asked softly. She blinked as if surprised I had asked. "To present yourself well," she said. "People notice things." "Yes," I said. "They do." She looked uncomfortable for half a second, then turned toward the hall. "I just want you to feel confident." But confidence was not what she wanted from me. She wanted polish, quiet, obedience. She wanted a mother who matched the version of herself she had created. And I loved her enough to pretend I did not know. A few days later, the envelope came. It arrived on a rainy Thursday, tucked between a medical bill and a catalog for garden supplies. The paper was thick ivory-colored with my full name printed across the front in dark blue ink. Mrs. Tiffany Carter. Not residence, not Ms. Carter or current occupant. My name. I stood at the kitchen counter longer than I should have, staring at it while rain tapped against the window over the sink. In the top left corner was the return address, National Museum of American Craft and History, Washington, D.C. My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. My second thought was one I had not allowed myself in years. They found me. My hands trembled as I slid one finger under the flap. Inside was a formal invitation to something called Heritage Night Gala and Private Exhibition Preview. Beneath the printed invitation was a handwritten note on museum letterhead. "Dear Mrs. Carter, it would be our great honor to have you attend. There are matters concerning your early textile work that we hope to discuss with you in person. Your presence is more important than you may realize. With deep respect, Dr. Benjamin Harris. I read it once, then again, then a third time, slower. My early textile work. The words opened a door inside me I had spent decades holding shut. Suddenly, I could smell dye boiling in enamel pots. I could feel muslin stretched under my palms. I could hear my younger self humming at 2 a.m. while a baby slept in the next room and my husband complained that the lamp was still on. I folded the letter carefully and pressed it against my chest. For one brief moment, I was not Lauren's aging mother in the back room. I was Tiffany Carter. The woman I had been before everyone else decided what parts of me were convenient to remember. Tiffany Lauren's voice came from the hallway. I quickly slipped the letter back into the envelope and placed the medical bill on top of it. She entered the kitchen, glancing at the counter. "Mail come." "Just bills," I said. I do not know why I lied. Maybe because the invitation felt too fragile to expose to her disbelief. Maybe because I could already hear her questions, her impatience, her polite little smile. Maybe because for once, I wanted to hold something that belonged only to me. Lauren grabbed a bottle of sparkling water from the refrigerator. "I have a big museum gala coming up next month," she said casually. "Lots of donors, very high profile." My heart beat once hard. "Oh," I said. "Yes, National Museum of American Craft and History. I'm helping coordinate media placement for one of the private sponsors." She checked her phone. "It's going to be exhausting." I stood very still. The same gala, the same museum, the letter hidden under my hand suddenly felt warm. Lauren looked up. "You okay?" "Yes," I said. "Just tired." She nodded, already looking back at her screen. "You should rest more." Then she walked out, leaving me with the rain, the letter, and a secret that had waited 40 years to breathe. That night, I took the envelope to my room and placed it inside the bottom drawer, beneath my mother's old sewing scissors. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, listening to Lauren typing upstairs, each keystroke sharp and certain. I wondered what she would say if she knew. I wondered whether she would be proud. Then I remembered the way she had said little ways, and I closed the drawer. Some stories are not ready to be told until the person who buried them is strong enough to stand beside the grave. I did not know it then, but that envelope was the first thread, and once pulled, it would unravel everything Lauren thought she knew about me. The next morning, I woke before sunrise with the envelope still on my mind. For most people, a letter from a museum would have been exciting. For me, it felt dangerous. Not because the paper itself held anything frightening, but because it carried a name I had spent years trying not to miss, Tiffany Carter, the artist. I made coffee quietly in Lauren's kitchen, careful not to wake her. The townhouse was still dark, except for the soft blue glow from the microwave clock and the gray morning light pressing against the windows. Rain from the night before had left silver streaks on the glass. I sat at the small breakfast table and unfolded the invitation again. Heritage Night Gala and Private Exhibition Preview. My eyes kept returning to the handwritten note. "There are matters concerning your early textile work that we hope to discuss with you in person. Your presence is more important than you may realize." I read those lines until the words blurred. For 40 years, no one had said my work mattered. Not directly, not with respect, not without adding someone else's name first. After my divorce from Michael Carter, I had learned not to expect recognition. People remembered what they were told to remember, and Michael had always been very good at telling stories that made him look like the visionary. I was the wife, the helper, the quiet pair of hands behind the curtain. But this letter did not say Michael's name. It said mine. I pressed my thumb over the museum seal as if it might disappear. At 7:30, Lauren came downstairs in workout clothes, Her hair tied back, her phone already tucked under her chin while she spoke to someone in that crisp professional tone. "No, the donor dinner has to feel intimate, not old-fashioned," she said. "We want legacy without dust. That's the balance." Legacy without dust. I almost laughed. She gave me a quick nod, then mouthed coffee, like I was a waitress in my own daughter's kitchen. I poured her a cup because old habits are hard to bury. She took it without looking directly at me. "Thanks, Mom." When her call ended, she opened her laptop at the counter and began scrolling through emails. I should have put the letter away. I should have slipped it back into the drawer beneath my mother's sewing scissors and waited. But something in me was tired of hiding before anyone had even asked me to. So I placed the envelope on the table. Lauren glanced at it once, then went back to her screen. "What's that, a letter? I can see that. It came from the museum." That made her look up. "The museum, the National Museum of American Craft and History." Her eyebrows pulled together. "Why would they send you something?" The question came too quickly. Not, "What did they say?" Not, "That's wonderful." Why would they send you something? I took a slow breath. "It's an invitation." "To what?" "The Heritage Night Gala." Lauren stared at me, then gave a short laugh, as if I had misunderstood something. "Mom, that's the gala I mentioned yesterday?" "Yes, I know." She walked over and picked up the envelope without asking. Her eyes moved over the front, then the invitation, then the handwritten note. I watched her expression shift from confusion to suspicion. "This is strange," she said. "Strange how you're not on the public guest list." "I didn't know there was a public guest list." "There is for sponsors and media. I've been working off it all week." She tapped the note with one manicured finger. "Maybe this is some kind of community outreach thing." "Community outreach. There is for sponsors and media. I've been working off it all week." She tapped the note with one manicured finger. "Maybe this is some kind of community outreach thing." "Community outreach. You know," she said carefully, "sometimes museums invite older artists or local craft people to make events feel more inclusive." Older artists, local craft people. I folded my hands in my lap so she would not see them tremble. "The note says they want to discuss my early textile work." Lauren's smile became patient, the way a doctor might smile at someone explaining a dream. "Mom, I'm sure you made beautiful things, but this gala is a major event. There will be donors, curators, national press. They're unveiling a significant private collection." "I understand." "I'm just saying you shouldn't read too much into it." Before I could answer, her phone rang again. She looked at the screen and stiffened. "It's Evan from the museum," she answered, turning away from me. "Hi, Evan." "Yes, I saw the revised media packet." I sat there with my letter half open on the table while Lauren paced near the kitchen island. Then her voice changed. "What do you mean there's a separate VIP list?" My heart began to beat harder. She listened, frowning. "No, I have the sponsor list. I have press board members, featured patrons." She paused. "A private honoree list." She turned slowly and looked at me. I looked down at my coffee. "Can you send it over?" she asked. "Yes." "Now, please." When she ended the call, the kitchen felt too quiet. "What is it?" I asked. Lauren did not answer. She opened her laptop and refreshed her email. A moment later, her face tightened. I watched her read. Then she read again. "Mom," she said slowly, "your name is on a restricted VIP list." I did not move. "What does that mean?" "It means..." She swallowed. "It means someone added you outside the normal sponsor process." Dr. Benjamin Harris signed the letter. Lauren looked annoyed by that, as if I had said something inconvenient. Benjamin Harris is the museum director. He doesn't usually handle invitations personally. I looked at the letter again. He handled this one. She stared at me for a long moment. Did you contact someone? No. Did you donate something? No. Did someone from church nominate you for some kind of community award? No. Lauren? My voice was quiet, but sharper than I intended. She blinked. I had not spoken to her like that in years. For a moment, she looked less like the polished publicist and more like the little girl who used to stand beside my sewing table asking why blue thread looked different at night. Then the moment passed. Well, she said, closing the laptop halfway. We need to be careful. If you're going, you can't just show up unprepared. I was invited. Yes, but you don't understand how these things work. She rubbed her forehead. There are rules. Social rules, media rules. People talk. If Benjamin Harris really did invite you personally, there must be a reason, and until we know what that reason is, we need to manage it. Manage it. That was Lauren's answer to anything human. Manage it. Shape it. Polish it. Make sure pain did not photograph badly. I can go by myself, I said. Lauren looked almost offended. Absolutely not. Why not? Because I'm already attending. And if people see you there alone and realize you're my mother, it will look strange that I didn't bring you. There it was. Not because she wanted to be with me, because it would look strange. I nodded slowly. I see. She must have heard the hurt that time because she softened her voice. Mom, I don't mean it that way. You often don't. Her mouth opened, then closed. The phone rang before either of us could say more. This time, the caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. number. Lauren glanced at it. Unknown, she said. But I knew. I cannot explain how. Some part of my body recognized that call before I answered it. I picked up the phone with both hands. Hello. A man's voice came through warm and formal. Mrs. Tiffany Carter. Yes. This is Dr. Benjamin Harris from the National Museum of American Craft and History. I hope I'm not calling too early. Lauren's eyes widened. No, I said. Not too early. I wanted to personally confirm that you received our invitation. I did. There was a pause on the line, not empty, but careful. Mrs. Carter, I also wanted to say what an honor it is to finally speak with you. Finally. The word moved through me like a hand reaching into the past. Lauren stepped closer, trying to hear. I turned slightly away from her. That's kind of you, I said. It is not kindness, Dr. Harris replied. It is overdue respect. My throat tightened. I gripped the edge of the counter. He continued. There are discoveries we believe you should see in person. Some are connected to works that have been misattributed for many years. We have spent considerable time verifying records, photographs, and correspondence. Misattributed. I closed my eyes. Michael. Even after all those years, his shadow still knew how to enter a room before he did. I don't know what to say, I whispered. You don't need to say anything right now, Dr. Harris said gently. Just come, and please know that your attendance is not ceremonial. It is central. Central. I had spent so long being placed at the edge of other people's stories that I barely knew what to do with a word like that. Lauren whispered, "Put it on speaker." I did not. Dr. Harris added, "Our senior curator, Margaret Collins, has been hoping to meet you for a very long time. She found something in the archives that changed the direction of the entire exhibition." What did she find? Another pause. I would rather not discuss all of it over the phone, But I can tell you this much. Mrs. Carter, the museum believes the public record has been wrong about you. I opened my eyes. Across the kitchen, Lauren's face had gone pale with curiosity. Wrong about me. The words should have frightened me. Instead, they made me feel strangely steady. After the call ended, I set the phone down carefully. Lauren did not speak at first. What did he say? The words should have frightened me. Instead, they made me feel strangely steady. After the call ended, I set the phone down carefully. Lauren. I set the phone down carefully. Lauren did not speak at first. What did he say? She finally asked. I looked at my daughter, at the woman who knew how to read every room except the one inside her own mother. He said they've been looking for me. Did not speak at first. What did he say? She finally asked. I looked at my daughter, at the woman who knew how to read every room except the one inside her own mother. He said, they've been looking for me. Lauren gave a nervous laugh. Looking for you? Yes. For what? I folded the invitation and returned it to its envelope. I suppose we'll find out at the gala. Her eyes narrowed. Mom, this isn't funny. I'm not laughing. She stared at me, unsettled now, maybe for the first time, realizing that there were doors in my life she had never opened because she assumed nothing valuable was behind them. Then she straightened, returning to the version of herself she trusted. Fine, she said. We'll go together. But please let me guide you through the evening. Don't speak to reporters unless I'm with you. Don't answer questions you don't understand. Don't bring up old family issues. And if someone asks why you're there, just keep it simple. What should I say? She hesitated. Say you're honored to be invited. I looked down at the envelope in my hands. Honored. No, I thought. That was not the word. Summoned. Remembered. Unearthed. Those were closer. But I only said, all right. Lauren seemed relieved, thinking she had settled the matter. She had no idea the matter had been unsettled 40 years before in a studio filled with fabric scraps, unpaid bills, and a husband who smiled for photographs beside work his hands had never touched. That afternoon, I went back to my room and opened the bottom drawer. I placed the invitation beside my mother's scissors. Then, after a long hesitation, I reached beneath the drawer liner and pulled out something I had not touched in years. A faded photograph. In it, I was 29 years old, standing in front of a half-finished textile mural, my hair tied back, my hands stained with indigo dye, my eyes bright with the kind of hope only young women still dare to show. On the back in my own handwriting were 4 words, before they erased me. I sat there holding that photograph until the sun went down. For the first time in decades, I wondered if the truth had not died. Maybe it had only been waiting for someone brave enough to pull it back into the light. For 3 days after Dr. Benjamin Harris called, I barely slept. Lauren thought I was anxious about the gala, and in a way, she was right. But it was not the gowns, or the donors, or the reporters that kept me awake. It was the past. Once a door like that opens, memory does not politely wait in the hallway. It comes in all at once, carrying smells, sounds, voices, and all the versions of yourself you tried to leave behind. I was 24 when I first understood that cloth could hold more than color. Back then, I lived in Baltimore in a narrow row house with peeling blue shutters and a kitchen table that doubled as my studio. I did not have expensive materials. I used what I could find: flour sacks from church kitchens, discarded curtains from neighbors' denim, from worn-out work pants, lace from old wedding dresses, and cotton scraps women brought me in paper bags. This belonged to my mother, someone would say. My son wore this jacket every winter. My grandmother slept under this quilt before she passed. I never treated those scraps like leftovers. To me, they were witnesses. My own mother, Ruth Carter, taught me that. She had been a seamstress in Richmond before she married my father, and she believed fabric remembered the body that wore it. Don't ever call it just cloth, Tiffany, she used to tell me. People wrap their lives in it. She was right. After she died, I began stitching small memory panels for families at church. A widow asked me to sew pieces of her husband's work shirt into a wall hanging. A mother asked me to use the blue pocket from her child's overalls. A veteran asked me to stitch his unit number into a red and gold panel he could hang over his mantle. I did not think of it as art at first. I thought of it as service, Muhammad. Then one Sunday, Reverend Paul Jenkins stood before the congregation and held up a panel I had made for a family who had lost their home in a fire. The entire sanctuary went quiet. The piece was simple gray cloth, bright red thread, 7 small squares representing each person who had survived, and 1 white strip for the grandmother they had lost. Reverend Jenkins looked at me and said, "Sister Tiffany, you are helping people grieve with their hands." That was the first time I cried over something I had made. Soon, people outside our church began asking for my work. Community centers, schools, local museums, Black heritage groups, women's clubs, a library in Annapolis, a historical society in North Carolina. I would take the bus with rolled fabric under my arm, wearing my best dress, and carrying my sketches in a cardboard folder. I was not famous, but I was known. That was enough. Then I met Michael Carter. He was handsome in the easy way that makes people forgive arrogance before they even recognize it. He wore tailored jackets, used words like vision and legacy, and knew how to talk to white donors without lowering his eyes or raising his voice. I admired that at first. I mistook confidence for strength. Michael said he believed in me. "You have something rare, Tiffany," he told me one evening after seeing one of my textile memorials at a community arts event. "But talent isn't enough. You need representation. You need someone who understands contracts." I was young enough to believe love and ambition could live in the same house without one devouring the other. We married within a year. At first, he helped. I will not lie about that. Michael typed proposals when my hands were tired. He drove me to meetings when the bus schedule was impossible. He spoke to gallery directors who had ignored my letters. He made people listen, but slowly the language began to change. My work became our project. My designs became our concept. My exhibitions became Carter Heritage Textiles, founded by Michael Carter. When I objected, he kissed my forehead and laughed. "Tiffany, don't be small-minded. People respect a business name. They don't need every detail of who stitched what. But I made it. I said once, and I got it in the room," he replied. That sentence stayed between us for years. By the time Lauren was born, I was exhausted in a way no one could see. I nursed my baby with one arm and sketched with the other. I dyed fabric during naps. I stitched after midnight. Michael attended meetings, shook hands, accepted praise, and returned home with promises. They loved the direction he would say. "Not your direction, the direction." When Lauren was 2, I created the piece that should have changed my life. It was called The River Remembers, a textile mural nearly 12 feet wide, made from indigo cotton, hand-dyed linen, and fragments donated by families from 3 states. It honored the lives of Black watermen, washerwomen dock workers, and children who had lived along the Chesapeake but were rarely named in official histories. I stitched tiny silver threads through the blue fabric so that under soft light the river looked alive. I worked on that piece for 11 months. My fingers cracked. My back ached. I bled on the hem twice and cut the stains out before anyone could see. Lauren learned to walk while holding onto the edge of my work table. Sometimes she would toddle over and pat the fabric with her little hands. "Pretty mama," she would say. I would laugh and tell her, "One day, I'll show you what all this means." But I never got the chance. Michael submitted the work to a regional exhibition under his company's name. When the acceptance letter came, I noticed his name listed as lead artist, Michael Carter. I stared at the paper until my vision blurred. This is wrong, I said. He did not even look ashamed. It's administrative. My name isn't here. As lead artist, Michael Carter. I stared at the paper until my vision blurred. This is wrong, I said. He did not even look ashamed. It's administrative. My name isn't here. You're included under the studio. I am the studio. His face hardened then. It was the first time I saw what lived beneath his charm. Don't embarrass yourself, Tiffany. These people don't want a housewife explaining thread work. They want a professional presentation. I can give them that. A housewife? That was the first time he said it like an insult. At the exhibition opening, I stood beside him in a navy dress I had made myself. People praised the mural. They asked Michael about symbolism, historical research dye methods, and the emotional weight of the piece. He answered everything, sometimes correctly, sometimes not. Once when a curator asked about the silver threads, Michael said, I wanted to suggest ancestral memory moving beneath the surface. I stood 3 feet away holding my purse so tightly the clasp left a mark in my palm. No one asked me anything. Later that night, Michael told me I should be grateful. You're part of something bigger now, he said. But I did not feel bigger. I felt erased. Over the next few years, it happened again and again. A memorial panel for a Southern community archive. A quilted installation for a civil rights anniversary. A series of textile portraits for a traveling exhibit on women's labor. My hands made them. Michael's name traveled with them. I told myself I was protecting the family. I told myself Lauren needed stability. I told myself recognition did not matter as much as love, but love should not require a woman to disappear. The final breaking point came when Lauren was 8. I found a contract in Michael's briefcase. He had sold 3 of my major pieces to a private collector in Chicago. Not loaned. Sold. And in the paperwork, he identified himself as the sole creator and owner. When I confronted him, he did not deny it. You would have let them sit in storage forever, he said. They were not yours to sell. Everything in this house is ours. No, I said, shaking so hard I could barely stand. Not this. He stepped close to me, lowering his voice. You want to fight me, fine. But think carefully. Who do you think they'll believe? The man with contracts, correspondence gallery contacts? Or the emotional wife who stitched at the kitchen table? That night after Lauren fell asleep, I packed my sketchbooks into 2 cardboard boxes. I took photographs, letters from family's old exhibition flyers, and a handful of fabric samples. I hid them at my cousin Denise's house in Silver Spring. Then I filed for divorce. People thought I left because Michael had been unfaithful. That was the easier story, and I let them believe it. Infidelity was something people understood. Theft of a woman's creative life was harder to explain without sounding bitter. During the divorce, my attorney said we could challenge Michael's claims, but it would be expensive, public, and ugly. You have a child, he reminded me. These cases can drag on for years. Lauren was little. She loved her father. She still ran to the window when his car pulled up. I could not bear the thought of making her childhood a battlefield of depositions, accusations, and newspaper whispers. So I chose peace. Or what I thought was peace. I signed papers. I kept quiet. I let Michael keep the public version of the work. I took the boxes, my sewing basket, and my daughter's school drawings. For years afterward, I told myself I had done the right thing. But there is a cost to silence. The world forgot my name. Worse than that, my own daughter never learned it. When Lauren grew older and asked why I did not do serious work, but there is a cost to silence. The world forgot my name. Worse than that, my own daughter never learned it. When Lauren grew older and asked why I did not do serious work anymore, I told her life had changed. When she said her father had always been the artistic one, I smiled and changed the subject. When she chose art public relations as a career, I supported her, even though every gallery brochure she brought home felt like a room I had been locked out of. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I thought protecting Lauren from the truth would preserve her innocence. Instead, it left her vulnerable to Michael's version of history. By the time she became an adult, she believed her father had been a misunderstood creative man, and I had been the practical mother who kept house-made soup and mended hems. I let her believe it because I was tired, because I was proud, because some wounds become part of your posture after a while. But after that museum letter arrived, memories I had buried began rising like thread pulled through cloth. I sat in my little room in Lauren's townhouse, holding the faded photograph of myself in front of the river remembers, and I finally understood something that frightened me. The past had not come back to comfort me. It had come back to testify. And if the museum had found what I thought they had found, then Lauren was about to discover that the mother she pitied had once been the woman everyone should have remembered. The week before the gala, Lauren turned my invitation into one of her projects. That was how my daughter handled uncertainty. She organized it until it looked obedient. On Monday morning, she came downstairs with a legal pad, a garment bag, and the expression of a woman preparing for battle. I was sitting at the kitchen table peeling an orange when she laid everything in front of me, as if we were discussing a campaign strategy instead of an evening at a museum. "Mom," she said, "we need to talk about Thursday." I looked at the garment bag. Thursday is still 3 days away. Exactly. That gives us time. Time for what? To make sure you feel prepared. I almost smiled. Lauren had learned to soften control by calling it help. "I have been to museum events before," I said. She gave me a look that told me she did not believe that, or perhaps did not believe the events I had attended counted. "I know," she said too quickly. "But this one is different. There will be press trustees, private collectors, donors, people who are very particular. Particular about art, particular about everything." She unzipped the garment bag and pulled out a muted gray dress with a high neckline and long sleeves. It was elegant, expensive long sleeves. It was elegant, expensive, and completely empty of personality. "I picked this up yesterday," she said. "It's simple, appropriate, not too loud." I looked down at my orange peel curling across the plate. "What's wrong with the blue dress I planned to wear and completely empty of personality?" "I picked this up yesterday," she said. "It's simple, appropriate, not too loud." I looked down at my orange peel curling across the plate. "What's wrong with the blue dress I planned to wear?" Lauren's mouth tightened. "The navy one." "Yes, the one you were mending. It's a good dress. It looks old." "Mom," I lifted my eyes to her. "So do I." She flinched, but only for a second. "That is not what I meant. It is what you're afraid other people will think." Her cheeks colored. "I'm trying to help you." "No," I said gently. "You're trying to make sure I don't embarrass you." The kitchen went quiet. Lauren looked toward the window, then back at me. "Why do you always turn things into something hurtful?" I almost laughed then, not because it was funny, but because the question was so backward it left me breathless. "I don't turn them into hurtful things," I said. "I receive them that way because they arrive that way." She crossed her arms. "Fine, wear whatever you want." But we both knew that was not permission. It was a punishment. I touched the sleeve of the gray dress. The fabric was soft, probably wool crepe lined beautifully. Lauren had taste. I could not deny that. Everything she chose looked like it belonged in a room where no one spilled coffee or laughed too loudly. "It's a lovely dress," I said. Her shoulders relaxed a little. "I just want the night to go smoothly," she said. "For whom?" "For both of us, s'amours." I wanted to ask when both of us had started meaning her first, and me quietly afterward, but I did not. There are questions mothers do not ask, because they already know the answers, and hearing them spoken out loud would hurt too much. Instead, I said, "I'll try it on later." Lauren nodded, relieved by what she thought was victory. Then she opened her legal pad. "I also wrote down a few things. A few things, just reminders." She clicked her pen. "If anyone asks why you're there, say you're honored to attend as a guest of the museum. Don't speculate about Dr. Harris's call. Don't mention Dad unless someone brings him up directly. Actually, even then, maybe avoid it." My hand stilled. "Why would I mention Michael? I don't know what this is about yet," she said. "That's the problem." It may not be a problem. Everything is a problem until you know how it will be perceived. There was my daughter again, living in the courthouse of public opinion, where every feeling had to submit evidence before being allowed to exist. "And reporters," she continued. "If any approach you, please let me handle it. I know how to answer questions, not media questions." I looked at her for a long moment. Once, many years ago, a reporter from a Baltimore arts magazine had asked me what it meant to create memorial work from donated fabric. I had told her that grief needed somewhere to sit. She cried before she finished writing the sentence down. Michael later told me I sounded too emotional. Now my own daughter was telling me the same thing in a different language. "I'll be careful," I said. Lauren seemed satisfied, but I could feel something inside me pulling away from her. Not angrily, not dramatically, just quietly, the way a tide leaves a shore. That afternoon, while Lauren worked upstairs, I took the gray dress to my room and hung it on the closet door. It looked strange there beside my cotton blouses, my navy dress, and the old church coat I still wore when the weather turned cold. I sat on the bed and stared at it. Appropriate, not too loud. That was what Lauren wanted from me. Not too bright, not too proud, not too visible. I opened the bottom drawer and took out the photograph again. There I was, at 29, standing in front of the River Remembers, wearing a patterned headscarf and a denim apron stained with dye. My face looked tired, but my eyes were alive. I had not yet learned to ask permission to take up space. I touched the young woman in the photograph. "I remember you," I whispered. Then I took out my navy dress. It was not glamorous. It had a modest neckline, 3/4 sleeves, and a skirt that moved when I walked. But I had sewn small blue-black beads along the cuffs, years ago beads that caught light like river water at dusk. I had made it for myself after my divorce, the first dress I stitched without Michael asking who it was for or how much it cost. It looked dated to Lauren. To me, it looked like survival. I spent the rest of the afternoon reinforcing the hem, easing the seam near the waist, and polishing the little beads with a damp cloth. My fingers ached, but the ache comforted me. It reminded me that my hands still knew what they were doing. That evening, Lauren came downstairs and found me sewing. Her eyes dropped immediately to the dress. "Mom." I did not look up. "Yes. You're not still planning to wear that?" "I am." She pressed her lips together. "I bought you a dress, and I thanked you. The blue one looks homemade. It is. That isn't a compliment at a gala like this." I set the needle down carefully. "Lauren, do you hear yourself?" She threw up one hand. "I am trying to protect you from walking into a room where people can be cruel." "No," I said. "You are trying to protect yourself from being associated with someone you think they might judge." Her face hardened. "That's unfair." "Is it?" She looked away. For a moment, the kitchen seemed to hold both of us in place. Me with my old dress in my lap. Her in a silk blouse with gold buttons, both of us wounded by different versions of the same family. Then she said something that cut deeper than she knew. "Mom, this is my world." I stared at her. Her world. Museums, galleries, donors, press releases. Walls full of work made by people who had dared to create. Her world. And what did she think mine had been? Laundry recipes, waiting rooms, grocery aisles. I swallowed the answer that rose in my throat, because I remembered a different Lauren. I remembered a little girl sitting cross-legged under my work table, wrapping thread around her fingers while I stitched. I remembered her asking why some cloth was sad and some cloth was happy. I remembered carrying her on my hip through a community art fair while women stopped me to touch my sleeve and say, "Your mother made something beautiful." Back then, Lauren had been proud of me without knowing pride had a social ranking. Back then, she called my studio the magic room. But children grow. Fathers talk. Mothers stay silent. And the magic room becomes in their memory just a messy kitchen. "I know this is your world," I said at last. "I would never try to take it from you." Her expression softened just slightly. "I didn't mean, but you might learn." I continued that I once had a place in it too. She blinked, then gave a tired sigh. "Mom, please don't start building this into something it isn't." There it was again. The wall, the gentle, polished wall she placed between my truth and her comfort. I picked up my needle. "What do you think it is?" "I think the museum is being kind. I think maybe they found some old community piece connected to you, and they want to acknowledge local contributors." "That's wonderful. It really is, but I don't want you to get hurt by expecting too much." Expecting too much. At 68 years old, after losing my marriage, my name, my work, my savings, my balance on wet leaves, and a fair amount of faith in being seen, my daughter still believed my greatest danger was hope. "I appreciate your concern," I said. She studied me, unsure whether she had won. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and her face changed instantly. Work face. "Yes, this is Lauren," she said, walking toward the living room. "No, the mother angle could be useful if we frame it right." Older women legacy craft, emotional continuity, yes, exactly. The mother angle. I sat frozen with the needle in my hand. She was talking about me. Not as her mother, not as Tiffany, as an angle. I listened from the kitchen as she continued. "My mother actually received an invitation too, which is interesting. I may be able to work that into a softer personal narrative if needed." A softer personal narrative. Something cold passed through me. I looked down at the navy dress in my lap, at the beads I had sewn one by one, each holding more truth than anything my daughter had said that day. For the first time, I wondered if Lauren's embarrassment was not just carelessness. Maybe it had become useful to her. Maybe a small, harmless, sentimental mother made her own rise seem sharper, cleaner, more impressive. Maybe she needed me diminished. That realization did not make me angry. It made me still. And in that stillness, I made a decision. I would go to the gala. I would wear my navy dress. I would speak if spoken to. I would not perform smallness for my daughter's comfort. And if the museum had truly found the truth, then Lauren would hear it the same way everyone else did. Not from my pleading, not from my defense, but from the walls of a museum that had finally decided to say my name. By Thursday evening, the sky over Washington, D.C. had turned the color of polished pewter. Lauren drove us to the National Museum of American Craft and History in silence. Not peaceful silence. Not the kind two people share when words are unnecessary. This was a silence with edges. She kept both hands on the steering wheel, her jaw tight, her eyes fixed on the traffic ahead. I sat beside her in my navy dress. The little blue-black beads on my cuffs caught the passing streetlights each time we drove beneath one. I had brushed my silver hair back neatly, pinned it low, and put on the small pearl earrings my mother had given me when I turned 18. I had also slipped the faded photograph into my purse, though I did not know why. Maybe I wanted proof that the woman I remembered had truly existed. Lauren noticed the dress the moment I came upstairs. She looked me over once slowly with disappointment she did not bother to hide. "You didn't wear the gray one." "No, I figured." That was all she said, but the 2 words followed us into the car. As we neared the museum, Lauren began reviewing instructions again. "Remember, don't wander off. Don't touch anything. If someone asks questions, keep your answers short. And please don't mention Dad unless you absolutely have to." I looked out the window at the marble steps glowing ahead. "Lauren," I said softly, "I have been alive longer than you have been managing rooms." She glanced at me startled. "I know that. Then trust that I can walk through one." Her lips parted, but she said nothing more. The museum rose before us like something both grand and cold. Tall columns, wide glass doors, banners hanging down the front announcing Heritage Night Gala in gold lettering. Black cars pulled up one after another, releasing women in silk gowns and men in dark suits. Photographers stood near the entrance flashes, bursting like tiny storms. Lauren's whole body changed as soon as we stepped out. Her shoulders straightened. Her smile sharpened. Her voice lifted into warmth. "Tiffany, stay close," she murmured without looking at me. "Not Mom." Tiffany. In public, even my motherhood became something she adjusted depending on the room. Inside the museum smelled of polished floors, white lilies, champagne, and money. A string quartet played near the central staircase. Waiters moved through the crowd carrying trays of sparkling wine. The ceiling seemed impossibly high, and light spilled from chandeliers onto marble glass, and faces trained to look impressed without appearing too eager. For a moment, I forgot Lauren's warnings. I stood still and breathed. Museums had always done something to me. Even after all the hurt, even after all the rooms where Michael had stood beneath my work and accepted praise meant for my hands, I still felt a hush inside my chest when I entered a place built to preserve what people made. There was reverence there, even when people failed to live up to it. Lauren touched my elbow. "Don't block the entrance." I stepped aside. At the check-in table, a young woman in black scanned Lauren's phone first. "Lauren Carter," she said brightly. "Welcome. Media Relations guest list." Lauren smiled. "Thank you." Then the woman asked for my name. "Tiffany Carter," I said. She looked down at the tablet. Then her expression changed. "Not dramatically. Just enough." She straightened. "One moment, Mrs. Carter," Lauren noticed. "Is there an issue?" "No issue at all." The young woman turned to another staff member and whispered something. That staff member looked at me, then disappeared through a side door. Lauren's smile tightened. "What's going on?" "I don't know," I said. But something in my stomach fluttered. A few seconds later, a man in a dark suit approached us. He had a museum badge clipped to his jacket and the careful posture of someone trained to solve problems before guests knew there were problems. "Mrs. Carter," he said, extending both hands toward me. "We are very honored you could join us tonight. Dr. Harris has been expecting you." Lauren blinked. I placed my hand in his. "Thank you." He turned slightly. "We have a reserved seating card for you, and Dr. Harris asked that we make sure you are comfortable before the program begins." Lauren's eyes moved from his face to mine. Reserved seating. Expected. Comfortable. The words were rearranging something in her mind, but she was fighting it. Her daughter Lauren said quickly. "Lauren Carter. I'm working with one of the sponsors." "Yes, Ms. Carter," the man said politely. "Welcome." The difference between our greetings was subtle, but Lauren heard it. We walked into the main hall together, though it did not feel like togetherness. It felt as if Lauren had suddenly realized she was standing beside a door whose key she did not hold. Almost immediately, a woman in a burgundy gown called her name. "Lauren, there you are." Lauren's face brightened with relief. "Patricia!" She turned to me. "Mom, I need to say hello. Just stay here for a minute." Before I could answer, she was gone, swept into a small circle of people who smelled faintly of perfume and expensive certainty. I stood near a wall display, holding my small black purse in both hands. Around me, conversations rose and fell. Private collection, major acquisition, long overdue. Textile memory work. That phrase made me turn. Textile memory work. I looked toward the adjacent gallery where a velvet rope separated the gala area from a dimly lit exhibition corridor. A sign stood near the entrance covered partially by a black cloth. Beyond it, I could see shapes on the walls, large and shadowed. Fabric. My breath caught. Without thinking, I moved closer. The first visible piece hung at the far end of the corridor. Only part of it was lit, a wash of deep blue cloth and a line of silver thread that curved like moving water. My knees weakened. No, it could not be. I took one step forward, then another. The rope was not blocking the full entrance, only guiding traffic. A small opening had been left near the side for staff. I did not cross into the gallery, but I came close enough to see the texture of the piece. The silver thread, the dark indigo, a narrow strip of faded work shirt cotton along the bottom edge. My hand rose before my mind could stop it. Not to grab, not to disturb, just to hover near the air between me and the work, the way one reaches toward a face in a photograph. "Ma'am," a voice said sharply, "please step back." I froze. A security guard had moved beside me, his expression firm, but not unkind. "I'm sorry," I said. I wasn't going to touch it. "The preview area is restricted until the unveiling." "Yes." Of course. I lowered my hand, embarrassed at how quickly my eyes had filled. Then I heard another voice behind him. "Wait." The guard turned. An older woman was walking toward us from inside the gallery. She was in her 70s, maybe, with short white hair, round glasses, and a black dress softened by a long patterned scarf. She moved slowly, but with authority, and everyone around her seemed to make space without being asked. When she saw me clearly, she stopped. Her hand went to her mouth. The hallway noise faded behind the sound of my own pulse. "Tiffany Carter," she whispered. I could not speak. The woman came closer, eyes shining. "My God, it really is you." The guard looked confused. "Dr. Collins?" She did not look at him. She looked only at me. "I'm Margaret Collins," she said, her voice trembling. "Senior curator, I have waited years to meet you." My fingers tightened around my purse. "You know me." Her face softened with something that looked almost like grief. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "I know your hands." That sentence broke something open in me. Not your husband, not your company, not the studio. Your hands. Margaret looked toward the piece in the corridor, then back at me. When I first examined the stitch patterns on the Chesapeake works, I knew the public records were wrong. No two artists bury knots the same way. No two artists handle tension the same way. Whoever made those pieces had a language, and it was not Michael Carter's. I felt the room tilt slightly. The guard stepped back now, aware that he had nearly stopped someone important without knowing it. Margaret reached for my hand, then paused, asking permission with her eyes. I gave it. She held my fingers gently as if they were fragile artifacts. "I found your initials," she said. hidden beneath a repair fold. TC, in blue thread. Tiny, almost invisible. My throat closed. I remembered that. I remembered stitching those initials late one night, not out of pride, but out of desperation. A whisper inside the work. A way of saying I was here even if no one cared to look. Margaret squeezed my hand. You are the original artist. The words landed inside me with unbearable tenderness. Behind me, someone gasped softly. I turned. Lauren stood a few feet away with Patricia and two other guests. Her wineglass was still in her hand. Her face was frozen in the polite half-smile of someone who had walked into a conversation too late and understood just enough to be afraid. Margaret followed my gaze. Your daughter? She asked. Yes, I said. Lauren stepped forward quickly. Hi, Lauren Carter. She extended her hand to Margaret with professional brightness. I'm sorry I don't think we've met. Margaret shook her hand, but her expression remained focused, almost solemn. Margaret Collins. I curated tonight's exhibition. Oh, Lauren said. Wonderful. I'm working with the Ellison Foundation's media team. Yes, Margaret replied. I know. There was no insult in her tone, but Lauren's smile faltered anyway. Then Margaret turned back to me. Dr. Harris will want to know you've arrived. We were hoping to speak with you privately before the program, but I see you found one of the works first. One of the works, I repeated. Margaret's eyes warmed. Yes, she said. There are more. The word moved through me like light through old glass. For years, I had believed those pieces were scattered sold hidden in private homes, misnamed in catalogs, maybe even destroyed. Now, one of them hung before me under museum lights, and a woman I had never met was looking at me as if I had returned from the dead. Lauren's voice cut in too bright. Mom, maybe we should step back. The program is probably starting soon. Margaret looked at her, then at me. Of course, she said, but Mrs. Carter is welcome here. Mrs. Carter is welcome here. I do not think Lauren understood why those words made me stand straighter. But I did, because for most of my life, I had been tolerated in rooms where my work was celebrated. That night, for the first time in decades, someone opened a room and told me I belonged. Lauren's grip on her wineglass tightened so much I thought the stem might snap. For a few seconds, none of us spoke. Margaret Collins stood beside me with her hand still lightly over mine. The security guard had stepped back with visible embarrassment, and my daughter stared at me as if she had just found a stranger wearing her mother's face. Original artist, Lauren repeated. Her voice was soft, but there was something sharp beneath it. Margaret looked at her carefully. Yes, that is the conclusion our research supports. Lauren gave a small laugh that did not sound like laughter at all. I'm sorry, I must have missed something. My mother used to sew, but I felt that word before she finished it. But, such a small word. Such a familiar doorway into dismissal. Margaret's expression did not change, but her tone cooled. Mrs. Carter did far more than sew. Lauren blinked, clearly unprepared to be corrected. Patricia, the donor in the burgundy gown, leaned forward with interest. Lauren, you never told us your mother was an artist. Lauren's face flushed. I didn't know there was anything to tell, she said. The sentence fell between us. I did not look at her right away. I looked instead at the shadowed blue textile beyond the rope, at the silver thread curved like water, at the evidence of my own hands hanging under museum lights, while my daughter stood beside me insisting she had never been told I mattered. And she was not entirely wrong. That was the cruel part. I had not told her enough. I had hidden too much. I had let Michael's version of our family become the wallpaper of her childhood, because I believed silence would protect her. Now that silence had grown teeth, Margaret seemed to sense the tension. "The program will begin shortly," she said gently. "Mrs. Carter, Dr. Harris will speak first. After that, the exhibition will be unveiled." Lauren turned to me quickly. "Mom, can I speak with you for a second?" Her voice carried the polished sweetness of someone trying to control a scene in public. Margaret squeezed my hand once before letting go. "I'll see you inside," she said. Then she walked back toward the restricted gallery, leaving Lauren and me standing beneath the highlights of the museum corridor. Lauren moved close enough that no one else could easily hear. "What was that?" she whispered. "What was what? Don't do that. Do what act like you don't know what I mean." I looked at her then. Really looked. Her eyes were bright with panic, not concern. She was not worried that I had been hurt. She was worried that she had been surprised. "Margaret recognized me," I said. "Recognized you as what?" I let the question sit. A waiter passed with champagne. Laughter rose from the main hall. Somewhere the string quartet shifted into a slower piece. As someone connected to the work, I answered. Lauren narrowed her eyes. "Connected how?" "That seems to be what the museum wants to explain tonight." She drew in a breath through her nose. "Mom, I need you to be honest with me. Did you exaggerate something to these people?" The words struck so cleanly that for a moment I felt nothing at all. Then heat moved up my neck. "Exaggerate? I'm not accusing you. I'm just trying to understand." "No," I said. "You're trying to make this small enough to fit what you already believe about me." Her mouth tightened. "That's unfair." "You said that before. Because you keep making me the villain." I almost smiled sadly. "Lauren, I have spent my whole life trying not to make you anything." That silenced her for half a breath. Then she leaned closer. "Please," she said, lowering her voice even more. "Just don't let this get out of hand tonight." I looked past her shoulder at the guests moving toward the auditorium entrance. Out of hand. That was what she called a truth before she knew whether it could benefit her. "Lauren, I said the museum invited me." "Yes, and I brought you." There it was again. Ownership dressed as assistants. I straightened. "You accompanied me." Her face changed just slightly. Maybe it was the first time she heard the difference. Before she could answer, a chime sounded through the hall. Guests began turning toward the auditorium. A staff member announced that the Heritage Night program would begin in 5 minutes. Lauren looked around, suddenly aware that several people were glancing our way. She smiled at them, then turned back to me with that same smile still pasted on her mouth. "Let's sit down." She reached for my elbow, but I moved before she touched me. Not dramatically, just enough. Her hand fell to her side. Inside the auditorium, rows of cream-colored chairs faced a stage framed by dark curtains. A large screen hung behind a podium. On one side of the stage stood a covered sign, its letters hidden beneath black fabric. On the other side, several reserved seats bore small cards. A staff member approached me immediately. "Mrs. Carter, this way, please." Lauren stepped forward too, but the woman hesitated. "Your seat is just beside hers, Ms. Carter." Just beside hers, not the other way around. I do not know if Lauren noticed how her jaw tightened, but I did. My reserved card read, Mrs. Tiffany Carter. Special guest? Lauren's card read, Ms. Lauren Carter. Guest! She stared at them for 1 second too long. I sat, slowly feeling the weight of the room around me. My knees ached, my hands trembled, and yet a strange calm had begun to gather inside my chest. Not peace, exactly. More like recognition arriving before I was ready to receive it. Lauren sat beside me and leaned close. Mom. Yes. Whatever happens, just remember there are cameras here. I turned my head. She was not whispering with cruelty. That was what hurt. She genuinely thought she was giving useful advice. There were always witnesses, Lauren, I said. She frowned. What does that mean? Before I could answer, the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the auditorium. Dr. Benjamin Harris stepped onto the stage. He was taller than I expected, with silver hair, a dark suit, and the measured presence of someone who understood the power of pauses. The audience applauded politely. Lauren sat straighter, automatically professional. I folded my hands in my lap and felt the worn edge of my mother's ring against my thumb. Dr. Harris began with the usual words. Welcome, gratitude, donors, community, history. But beneath his formal language, I heard something building. Each sentence moved closer to a door. Tonight, he said we gather not only to celebrate craft, but to correct memory. Correct memory? My breath caught. Beside me, Lauren shifted. Dr. Harris continued. For too long, American craft has been spoken of as secondary to fine art. For too long, women's hands, especially the hands of women working inside homes, churches, community halls, and borrowed studios, have shaped our cultural memory without receiving their rightful names. A murmur moved through the audience. Lauren leaned toward me. Do you know what this is about? I kept my eyes on the stage. Yes, I whispered. I think I do. She stared at me. Dr. Harris turned slightly toward the covered sign. The exhibition you will preview tonight began as an effort to trace a group of textile memorials attributed for decades to the Carter Heritage Studio. Lauren's breath stopped. I felt it. He went on. But as our team examined the physical works, archival correspondence, donor records, repair notes, photographs, and community testimony, a different story emerged. The screen behind him flickered to life, but it showed only a blurred image for now. A dark blue field, silver thread, a river. My hands tightened. Lauren whispered, Dad, I did not answer. Dr. Harris looked toward the front row, his gaze finding me. A story about a woman whose work was too intimate to be mistaken once people finally knew how to look. The room seemed to tilt toward me. I felt Lauren turn. Not fully. Just enough to look at my face from the corner of her eye. And then, just as the weight of the moment became too much for her, she did something small and devastating. She rolled her eyes. Not at the stage. At me. It was quick. Almost private. The kind of gesture a daughter makes when she believes her mother has become embarrassing, emotional, inconvenient. Then she leaned close and whispered, Mom, please don't start acting like this is about you. Those words entered me more deeply than any public insult could have, because I was not acting. I was remembering. I kept my face forward. My throat burned, but I did not cry. Not yet. On stage, Dr. Harris lifted one hand. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, it is my honor to introduce the exhibition title. The black cloth dropped from the covered sign, and there in gold letters beneath the museum lights was a name I had not heard spoken in public for nearly 40 years. The river remembers the lost textile works of Tiffany Carter. The auditorium went silent. Lauren did not breathe, and for the first time that night, my daughter's eyes stopped rolling. For a moment, nobody clapped. The sign stood beneath the stage lights, bright and undeniable. The river remembers the lost textile works of Tiffany Carter. My name did not look real to me. I had written it thousands of times on school forms, bank papers, medical files, grocery checks, and birthday cards. But seeing it there in gold letters on a museum stage, attached to the work I had mourned like a lost child, made my whole body feel weightless and heavy at the same time. Beside me, Lauren sat perfectly still. Her face had gone pale, the color draining from her cheeks so completely that even her lipstick looked too bright. Her eyes moved from the sign to the screen, then to me, then back to the sign, as if she believed the letters might rearrange themselves if she stared long enough. Dr. Harris let the silence breathe. Then he said, "Some names are not lost by accident. Some are misplaced by carelessness, hidden by power, or buried beneath the convenience of someone else's story." A low murmur moved through the auditorium. The screen behind him sharpened. A black and white photograph appeared. I was young in it, 29. Standing in front of the unfinished mural, my sleeves rolled up my hands, stained dark from indigo dye. My hair was tied back in a scarf. My smile was tired, but alive. A sound left Lauren's throat almost too soft to hear. "Mom." I kept looking at the screen. I remembered the day that photograph was taken. My cousin Denise had stopped by with a cheap camera and told me I looked like history standing in my own kitchen. I had laughed at her then. I told her history did not wear flour on its sleeve or keep a baby's bottle warming in a pot of water while trying to finish a commission. But Denise took the picture anyway. Thank God she did. Dr. Harris continued. This photograph was found in the personal archive of Denise Walker, cousin to Mrs. Tiffany Carter. It became one of many pieces of evidence that helped our team re-examine a body of work long attributed to Carter Heritage Studio and publicly to Michael Carter. At the mention of her father's name, Lauren stiffened. I felt it more than saw it. The next image appeared. It was The River Remembers. Fully lit, fully restored. The mural filled the screen in deep blue, gray, brown, and silver. Even projected, it seemed to move. A river made of cloth, names hidden in currents. Tiny strips of old shirts, handkerchiefs, aprons, and funeral ribbons stitched into waves. Gasps rose around the room. Some people leaned forward. Others covered their mouths. A woman 2 rows behind me whispered, "Oh my God." I could not breathe. For decades, I had seen that piece only in memory rolled across my kitchen table, heavy in my lap, folded into Michael's car, then disappearing into his world of contracts and private buyers. I had imagined it fading in a storage room somewhere, or hanging under the wrong name in a house where nobody understood the grief inside it. But there it was, alive. Dr. Harris said, "For many years, this work was cataloged as a studio piece under Michael Carter's direction. But our conservation team discovered inconsistencies in the official attribution. Stitch patterns, dye notes, hidden initials, family correspondence, and testimonies from original fabric donors all pointed to one artist." He turned slightly toward me. "Tiffany Carter." This time, applause began. Not loud at first. A few hands, then more. Then the whole auditorium seemed to rise into sound. I did not stand. I could not. My hands gripped the sides of my chair while applause washed over me like rain after a long drought. Lauren looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not pride. Not yet. It was confusion mixed with fear. The fear of a person realizing she had spent years reading a book upside down. The screen changed again. A photograph of a church basement appeared. Women stood around long tables covered in fabric. I was there too, younger, smiling beside a mother holding a scrap of a child's blue jacket. Then came another image, me kneeling in front of a quilted memorial panel at a community center. Another me speaking with older men in caps beside a wall hanging made from work shirts. Another, my hands guiding silver thread through indigo cloth. Every image struck the room. Every image struck my daughter. Lauren leaned toward me, whispering, "Why didn't you tell me?" The question might have broken me if it had come with tenderness. But it came with accusation. as if my silence had embarrassed her, as if my erased life had inconvenienced her evening. I turned to her slowly. "I tried once," I whispered back. Her brows pulled together. "When you were 17, you were writing that college essay about Dad's creative legacy." Her lips parted. Memory moved across her face, but faintly like a shadow underwater. "I told you there were things about the work you didn't know," I said. "You told me not everything had to be about old resentments." Her eyes flickered. She remembered. "Not fully, but enough." "On stage, Doctor." Harris introduced Margaret Collins, and the applause shifted as she stepped up beside him. Under the lights, she looked smaller than she had in the gallery, but her voice carried with quiet force. "When I first encountered these works," Margaret said, "I was struck by something no document could explain. The official records describe them as conceptual heritage pieces directed by Michael Carter. But the works themselves spoke in another language entirely. They were intimate, technical, communal, maternal. They contained grief, but not spectacle. History, but not distance. Whoever made them had sat with the families, had touched the donated fabrics, had listened. My eyes filled. Margaret looked toward the audience. "You cannot fake that kind of listening." The screen showed close-up images, now my stitches, my hidden initials, tiny knots buried beneath backing cloth, handwritten die notes from my old sketchbook. My handwriting appeared enlarged behind her. "Indigo bath, too dark. Add water slowly. Mrs. Ellis wants her son's sleeve near the river bend. Silver thread only where memory moves." People in the audience murmured again. Lauren stared at the handwriting. "My God," she whispered. Dr. Harris returned to the microphone. "Tonight's exhibition restores Tiffany Carter's name to 12 known works. It also opens an ongoing investigation into additional pieces believed to have been sold or archived under incorrect attribution." 12. I had known about some. Not 12. My chest tightened. 12 pieces of my life had been found. 12 pieces of myself had survived without me. The auditorium lights dimmed further, and the screen began playing a short film. A narrator's voice filled the room, deep and gentle, telling the story of community textile memorials in late 20th century America. Then came voices of people I had not heard in decades. An elderly woman on screen said, "Tiffany took my husband's shirt and made it into something I could look at without falling apart." A man with gray hair said, "She asked about my father for 2 hours before she stitched a single thing. That's how I knew she cared." Another woman said Michael came for the photographs. Tiffany came for the stories. A small sound escaped me. I covered my mouth. Lauren turned sharply. "What's wrong?" I shook my head. Those people had remembered. All those years while I thought the world had swallowed my name, someone still remembered my hands, my questions, my kitchen table, my care. Then the final image of the film appeared. A little girl under a work table holding a spool of blue thread. Lauren. She was maybe 3 years old. Her curls were tied in 2 little puffs. Her cheeks were round. She was looking up at me with a smile so trusting it hurt to see. The auditorium softened with quiet affection. Lauren froze. "That's me," she whispered. On screen, my younger voice came from an old home video Denise must have recorded. "One day, baby girl, I'll show you what all this means." The video ended. The screen faded to black. The room remained silent. Then Dr. Harris said, "Mrs. Tiffany Carter is with us tonight." Every head turned. I felt the shift like heat. Faces, hundreds of them, curious, respectful, moved. And beside me, Lauren looked as if the floor had opened beneath her. A staff member approached quietly and gestured toward the stage, but Dr. Harris did not ask me to come up yet. He only said, "Before we invite Mrs. Carter to speak later this evening, we ask you first to walk through the exhibition and encounter the work as she created it through memory, through witness, and through love." The lights rose slowly. Applause came again, louder this time, many people standing. A standing ovation. For me. I remained seated for several seconds because my body did not know how to accept what my heart had wanted for 40 years. Then Margaret appeared at the end of our row, eyes shining. "Mrs. Carter," she said softly, "would you like to see your work? Your work. Not Michael's, not the studio's. Mine." I stood. Lauren stood too unsteady. "Mom," she whispered. I looked at her. For once, she had no instructions, no polished warning, no careful public words, only shock. I wanted to comfort her. That old mothering instinct rose in me immediately, strong and familiar. But I did not. Not yet. Because some truths need room before forgiveness rushes in to tidy them away. So I turned toward Margaret, lifted my chin, and walked toward the exhibition that had finally learned my name. Margaret led me toward the exhibition entrance as though she were escorting me into a chapel. The black cloth that had hidden the gallery sign was gone now. Guests gathered behind us, whispering, waiting, watching me with the kind of attention I had not felt in decades. I could hear cameras clicking softly. I could hear Lauren's heels behind me uneven for the first time that night. The gallery doors opened. And there it was. My life. Not all of it, of course. No museum can hold every sleepless night, every unpaid bill, every meal reheated at midnight, every tear wiped away before a child walked into the room. But the walls held enough. Enough to make my knees tremble. The first piece was The River Remembers. It hung alone on the far wall, lit from above, with a soft silver glow. Restored, stretched, protected, it looked larger than I remembered. Or maybe I had spent so many years making myself smaller that I forgot how large the work had always been. I stepped toward it slowly. The indigo had deepened with age. The silver threads still caught the light like moving water. Along the lower edge, small pieces water. Along the lower edge, small pieces of donated cloth formed a shoreline. Brown denim, white cotton, faded plaid funeral ribbon, a strip of a child's sleeve. I lifted my hand, but he did not touch. I thought it was gone of donated cloth formed a shoreline. Brown denim, white cotton, faded plaid funeral ribbon, a strip of a child's sleeve. I lifted my hand, but did not touch. I thought it was gone. I whispered. Margaret stood beside me. It was in a private collection in Chicago. The owner passed away. His daughter contacted us during an estate review. "Chicago," I said. Michael had sold it there. I remembered the contract. I remembered finding it in his briefcase. I remembered my own voice shaking as I told him he had no right. "He listed himself as creator," Margaret said quietly, as if answering a question I had not spoken. But the piece itself disagreed. I turned to her. She gestured toward a small display case beside the mural. Inside lay copies of documents, photographs, fabric samples, and one enlarged image of the hidden initials beneath a repaired fold. "T.C." My breath caught again. "I put that there because I was angry," I said. Margaret smiled sadly. "Sometimes anger preserves the truth." Dr. Harris joined us then. The crowd gave way for him, though many stayed close enough to listen. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "I know this is overwhelming. That is a gentle word for it." He nodded. "We wanted you to see the works before the formal press questions begin. You are under no obligation to answer anything tonight." Lauren stepped forward quickly. That might be best. My mother has had a very emotional surprise, and I think Dr. Harris turned toward her with polite firmness. Mrs. Carter may decide what is best for herself. The words were quiet, but they struck Lauren like a slap. Her mouth closed. I did not look at her because if I did, I might soften too soon. And I knew now that softness, when given before truth had finished speaking, could become another form of silence. We moved to the next work. A tall textile panel called Names for the Morning. I remembered it immediately. It had been made for a community in Georgia after a church fire. The families had sent me pieces of choir robes, lace gloves, men's handkerchiefs, and tiny squares cut from Sunday dresses. I had stitched them into rising bands of gold cream and deep brown, each layer holding names embroidered so small they looked like prayer marks. A woman behind me began crying. "My aunt's name is in that piece," she said. I turned. She was in her 50s maybe, with red eyes and a trembling mouth. My mother told me about a woman named Tiffany who sat with them in the fellowship hall, she said. She said you remembered every name. I could not answer, so I reached for her hand. She squeezed mine hard. Lauren watched us, confusion slowly giving way to something heavier. Witnesses were appearing all around her, people who remembered what she had never been taught to see. Dr. Harris guided the group farther into the gallery. Each piece had a label now. Not Carter Heritage Studio. Not Michael Carter. Tiffany Carter. Tiffany Carter. Tiffany Carter. The repetition felt almost unbearable. One wall displayed an archival timeline. My early church panels. My regional commissions. The formation of Carter Heritage Studio. The misattribution. The disappearance of major works into private collections. The rediscovery. The conservation evidence. The testimonies. There was even a section titled The Mechanics of Erasure. I stood before it a long time. It showed copies of contracts bearing Michael's signature, exhibition brochures where my name had been omitted, letters from community leaders addressed to me later filed under Michael's business records. A photograph of Michael standing beside The River Remembers, smiling as though he had pulled the river from his own chest. Lauren came to my side. Her voice was small. Did Dad do this? I looked at the photograph of Michael. For years, I had avoided saying the full truth aloud because I thought truth would make me cruel. But that night, surrounded by evidence, I realized truth was not cruelty. Truth was a room with the lights finally turned on. Yes, I said. He did. She swallowed. But he always said you helped him. I did not help him make the work, Lauren. I made the work. He helped himself to it. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away, as if tears were inappropriate for the setting. Why didn't you fight harder? The question pierced me. I turned to her slowly. I had an 8-year-old daughter who loved her father. Her face changed. I continued quietly. And I had no money for a long court battle, and I had spent years being told that the world would believe him before it believed me. Lauren looked down. Guests moved around us, reading, murmuring, taking in the story piece by piece. A journalist nearby whispered to another, "This is bigger than the exhibition packet suggested." Dr. Harris heard it and stepped to the center of the room. "If I may have everyone's attention," he said. The gallery quieted. He stood near The River Remembers, hands folded. There is a reason we chose to tell this story publicly tonight. This exhibition is not simply about correcting labels on a wall. It is about understanding how easily cultural memory can be shaped by access, gender, marriage, class, and the assumption that the person speaking is the person who created. His gaze moved across the room. For decades, Tiffany Carter's work helped families mourn, remember, and preserve histories that institutions often ignored. She created with donated cloth from real lives. She interviewed families. She recorded names. She translated grief into form. Yet when the work entered formal art spaces, her name was removed from many of the records. Silence deepened. Tonight, he continued, we restore her name not as a gesture of kindness, but as a matter of historical accuracy. Historical accuracy. My name, my labor, my grief, my hands, no longer a family disagreement. No longer an old resentment, no longer something Lauren could dismiss with a sigh. A matter of history. Margaret stepped forward with a folder. With Mrs. Carter's permission, she said, looking at me, we would like to display one more discovery. I did not know what she meant. You have my permission, I said carefully. She opened the folder and signaled to a technician near the wall. The screen inside the gallery lit up. A scanned letter appeared. My handwriting. I recognized it instantly. My chest tightened so sharply I had to grip the edge of a display case. It was a letter I had written to Michael after finding the Chicago contract. I had never sent it, or at least I thought I had never sent it. Maybe I had placed it with my attorney's papers. Maybe Denise had kept a copy. The years blurred. The letter read, Michael, you can put your name on the contract, but you know whose hands made the river. You know which families sat at our table. You know whose blood is stitched under the left corner where the needle slipped. One day, someone will look closely enough to see me. The room was silent. Lauren covered her mouth. I stared at those words written by a younger, angrier, braver version of myself. One day, someone will look closely enough to see me. Margaret's voice was gentle. We found this letter in a legal archive connected to the Carter divorce proceedings. It helped us understand that Mrs. Carter challenged the attribution privately, even if circumstances prevented a public fight. Lauren turned toward me, tears now slipping freely. Mom, she whispered. But I could not comfort her. Not yet, because Dr. Harris was speaking again. We also have sworn statements from 3 original fabric donors, 2 early exhibition volunteers, and Mrs. Carter's cousin Denise Walker, confirming that Tiffany Carter designed and executed the works. Additional dye analysis and stitch comparison support the same conclusion. He paused. And yes, records indicate that Michael Carter knowingly registered several works under his own name. A wave of shock passed through the gallery. Lauren closed her eyes. Her father had not been misunderstood. He had been exposed. And I, the mother she had treated as quaint and sentimental, was standing in the center of a room where strangers finally understood what my own child had never believed. I looked at Lauren then. She seemed smaller, younger, almost lost. For a moment, I saw the little girl under my work table again, holding blue thread, trusting me to explain the world. But this time, I could not explain it away. This time, she had to stand inside the truth and feel its weight. Margaret touched my elbow. Mrs. Carter, she said, the press will have questions after your remarks. But before that, would you like a few minutes alone with the work? I looked around the room, at the walls, at the names, at the evidence, at my daughter. Then I looked back at The River Remembers. Yes, I said, but not alone. Margaret nodded, assuming I meant Lauren. I did not. I turned toward the woman whose aunt's name was stitched in Names for the Morning, toward the guests wiping their eyes, toward the strangers who had come expecting a gala and found a buried woman breathing again. These pieces were never mine alone, I said. They belonged to the people who trusted me with their memories. And for the first time that night, when people looked at me, I did not lower my eyes. I had barely finished speaking when a man stepped out from the edge of the crowd with a small recorder in his hand. I recognized him from Lauren's world before she said his name. Daniel Brooks. He was a cultural journalist, the kind of man whose reviews could make donors nervous and galleries suddenly humble. Lauren had mentioned him more than once at dinner, usually with a mixture of admiration and fear. "Mrs. Carter," he said carefully. "Daniel Brooks' Arts Ledger. May I ask you something?" Before I could answer, Lauren moved between us. "Daniel," she said with a polished smile, "tonight has been very emotional for my mother. I'm sure formal press access will be coordinated after Dr. Harris' team." Daniel did not look at her. He looked at me, Mrs. Carter. That small choice changed the air. Lauren felt it. I did too. I gave a gentle nod. "You may ask." Daniel's expression softened. "When you saw your name on those walls tonight, did it feel like justice?" The question was simple. The answer was not. I looked toward the river Remembers, glowing under museum light. Around us, people had lowered their voices, pretending not to listen while listening with everything they had. "Justice," I said slowly, "is a difficult word when something has been gone a long time. I am grateful. I am moved. But no wall label can return the years when my daughter did not know who I was." The room went still. Lauren's face tightened. Daniel's eyes flicked toward her for the first time. "Your daughter works in arts public relations, correct?" Lauren answered before I could. "Yes," she said brightly. "I've always cared deeply about cultural legacy, which is why tonight is so meaningful for our family." "Our family." She said it smoothly, as if she had not spent the last year hiding me behind polite introductions and closed doors. Daniel studied her. "That's interesting," he said. Something in his tone made Lauren's smile falter. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and took out a folded sheet of paper. "I reviewed some of your previous writing before tonight's event," he said, "in preparation for the Ellison Foundation coverage." Lauren's posture changed. "My previous writing? Yes, particularly your essay from 3 years ago. Beyond Sentiment, Why Domestic Craft Must Stop Asking for Serious Attention." The title landed like a dropped glass. I turned toward Lauren. She went pale again, but differently this time. Not shocked, caught. Daniel unfolded the paper. "In that essay," he continued, "you argued that museums were being pressured to elevate what you called emotionally convenient work produced by aging hobbyists. You also wrote that not every mother with a needle is an artist." A murmur moved through the gallery. Lauren's lips parted. "Daniel, that piece was about institutional standards, not—" "Not your mother?" he asked. The question was calm. Brutal, because it was calm. Lauren looked at me, then panic breaking through her public mask. "Mom, I didn't know. I believed that. And somehow it hurt worse." She had not written those words to attack me personally. She had written them because somewhere along the way, she had learned to think women like me were embarrassing until institutions decided otherwise. Daniel turned back to me. "Mrs. Carter, were you aware of your daughter's position on textile and domestic craft?" Lauren inhaled sharply. "That is unfair." I raised one hand slightly. "Not to protect her, to ask for space." "I was aware," I said quietly, "that my daughter did not value the kind of work I once made." Lauren's eyes filled. "Mom." But I was not aware of the essay. The words seemed to strike her harder than Daniel's. For the first time that night, she looked ashamed, not because strangers were watching, but because I was. Daniel lowered the paper. "Ms. Carter," he said, "did you know that essay was cited in a donor memo during early discussions about whether textile memorial work would receive major exhibition funding?" Lauren froze. I turned toward Daniel. What Dr. Harris stepped forward, his face grave. "That is true," he said. "During an earlier review period, before our team had completed the attribution research, the proposed exhibition was nearly postponed. Some donors were concerned the subject would appear too sentimental, too domestic, insufficiently significant for national presentation." He paused. One memo referenced Ms. Carter's essay as an example of contemporary criticism against elevating this type of work. The gallery blurred for a second. I reached for the back of a nearby chair, but Margaret was already beside me, steadying my arm. Lauren looked as if someone had removed the ground from under her. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know it was yours." Dr. Harris's voice remained gentle but firm. "That may be true, but the language did harm the field your mother helped shape." Lauren turned to me fully. "Mom, I swear I didn't know." I looked at my daughter, the daughter who once sat under my work table, the daughter who had called my studio the magic room, the daughter who later grew embarrassed by my handmade dresses and sentimental stories. "I believe you," I said. Relief flashed across her face. Then I added, "But not knowing is not the same as not harming." Her relief disappeared. For years, Lauren had lived by perception. She knew how to frame, soften, redirect, and control. But this was different. There was no useful angle here. No press strategy could turn contempt into innocence. Daniel did not push another question. He seemed to understand that the story had moved beyond journalism for a moment. But another woman near the back did speak. She wrote that the woman asked. It was the same woman whose aunt's name was stitched into names for the morning. Her voice trembled. "My family's grief is not a hobby." Lauren looked at her. "I'm sorry." The woman shook her head. "Don't apologize to me because people are listening." That sentence cut through the room. Lauren looked down. I had seen her embarrassed many times. Embarrassment was quick and hot. This was slower, heavier. Shame was beginning to arrive, and shame, unlike embarrassment, does not care how well you are dressed. A museum staff member approached Dr. Harris and whispered something. He nodded. "Mrs. Carter," he said softly. "The formal remarks will continue in 10 minutes. We can give you a private room if you would like time." Private room. I almost said yes. My body wanted escape. My heart had been opened too many times in one evening. My daughter's humiliation was unfolding in front of donors, curators, journalists, strangers, and community members. Part of me wanted to gather her into my arms and shield her from the same public judgment she had feared for me. But another part of me knew that if I rescued her too quickly, she would learn nothing except that my love could still be used as shelter from accountability. So I said, "No, I'll stay." Lauren's head lifted. "Mom, please," she whispered. "Can we talk?" "Not yet." Her face crumpled just slightly. I had never told Lauren no in public before. Maybe not even in private, not when it mattered. My motherhood had become a habit of making space for her even when she took all of it. Daniel folded the essay and returned it to his pocket. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "I don't want to intrude further." "You have not intruded," I said. "You have revealed something." He nodded respectfully and stepped back. Lauren stood beside me, tears sliding down her cheeks now. She looked younger than 42, younger than her career, younger than her opinions. "I thought I was being serious," she said, barely above a whisper. "I thought I was defending art from being watered down." I looked at the wall of my textile works. "No," I said. "You were defending a gate you had been taught to admire." She covered her mouth. Around us, guests slowly resumed moving through the gallery, but the energy had changed. They were no longer only looking at the artwork. They were looking at the living wound beside it. The daughter who had dismissed what strangers had come to honor the mother whose silence had allowed misunderstanding to harden into contempt. Margaret leaned close to me. You do not owe anyone perfection tonight, she whispered. I nodded, grateful, because I did not feel perfect. I felt proud and hurt, seen and exposed, vindicated and tired. I felt like a woman who had been pulled from the ground with roots still attached. Lauren wiped her face quickly when she saw two photographers nearby. Old instinct. Then she caught herself, her hand lowered. For once, she let the tears stay visible. That small act did not heal anything. But I noticed it. The chimes sounded again, calling guests back toward the auditorium for the next portion of the program. Dr. Harris looked at me. Mrs. Carter, after my introduction, we would be honored if you would say a few words. Lauren turned toward me, startled. You're speaking... I looked at her. Yes. Fear crossed her face. What are you going to say? It was the same question she had asked all week in different forms. What will you say? How will it sound? How will it look? But this time, I did not soften the answer. The truth, I said. Lauren closed her eyes, and for the first time, she did not tell me to be careful. When Dr. Harris called my name from the stage, I felt every year of silence rise with me. Mrs. Tiffany Carter, he said, if you are willing, we would be honored to hear from you. The applause began before I moved. It rolled through the auditorium not like noise, but like something warm and human trying to reach me. People stood again. Some pressed their hands to their hearts. Some looked at me with tears in their eyes, as if they had not only seen my work, but understood the woman who had been missing from it. I stood slowly. My knees were not steady. My hands were worse. But I walked. Margaret waited near the aisle, her face full of quiet encouragement. Dr. Harris stepped aside from the podium when I reached the stage. He offered his hand, and I took it. Not because I needed help, though perhaps I did, but because after so many years of doors closing, it felt strange and beautiful to be welcomed forward. The lights were bright, too bright at first. The audience became a blur of faces. Somewhere in the front row, Lauren sat frozen, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands locked together in her lap. For once, she was not managing anything. Not the press, not the room, not me. I stood behind the podium and looked down at the microphone. I had imagined sometimes in my loneliest years what I might say if anyone ever asked me about my work again. In those private daydreams, I was eloquent, strong, clear. I said everything perfectly. I named every theft. I corrected every lie. I made everyone understand. But standing there, I felt only the weight of my own breathing. I am not used to being introduced that way, I began. A few people gave a soft, sympathetic laugh. I smiled, though my lips trembled. For most of my life, when people introduced me, they said I was someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's helper, someone's guest. And those are not small things. I was a wife. I am a mother. I have helped many people. I have been grateful to be invited into rooms. I paused. But tonight is the first time in a very long time that I have been introduced as myself. The room grew still. I looked toward the gallery doors where my textile pieces waited beyond the auditorium walls. When I was a young woman, I did not think I was making history. I was making what people needed. A mother would bring me a piece of her son's jacket. A widow would bring me a sleeve from her husband's Sunday shirt. A church member would bring me lace from a grandmother's dress. They would sit at my kitchen table and tell me stories they could barely say out loud. My voice steadied. I listened. Then I stitched. Several people nodded. I believed cloth could hold what words could not. I believed grief needed somewhere to rest. I believed names mattered, especially the names the world was too quick to forget. My eyes found Lauren. She was crying silently now. I did not look away. I also believed for too many years that if I stayed quiet, I was keeping peace. The words felt heavier than I expected. I told myself that a child should not have to choose between her parents. I told myself that courtrooms cost too much, not only in money, but in childhood. I told myself that recognition was not as important as stability. So, when my work was taken, renamed, and carried into rooms without me, I swallowed the truth. I gripped the sides of the podium. Many women know that kind of swallowing. A murmur moved through the audience, deep and aching. We swallow words at dinner tables. We swallow pain in marriages. We swallow disappointment when our children look at us and see only age, not history. We swallow because we think love requires it. We swallow because we are tired. We swallow because the world has taught us that a quiet woman is easier to call good. I could hear someone crying, but silence has a cost. And sometimes, the people we most want to protect grow up inside the silence and mistake it for proof that nothing happened. Lauren bowed her head. I softened my voice. My daughter did not know all of my story. Some of that is because I did not tell her. Some of it is because she did not ask. And some of it is because there are stories women try to bury so deeply that even their children build their lives on the ground above them, never knowing what is underneath. I saw Lauren press her hand to her mouth. I had not come to wound her, but I could not save her from truth anymore. I will not stand here tonight and pretend I was not hurt, I continued. I was hurt when my name disappeared. I was hurt when my work was praised under another name. I was hurt when the world believed confidence over labor. I was hurt when my daughter saw me as small because I had hidden the parts of myself that proved I was not. The room held its breath. But I am not here for revenge. I turned slightly toward Dr. Harris and Margaret. I am here because people looked closely. A curator looked at stitches and saw a language. A museum director chose accuracy over convenience. Families remembered who sat at their tables. And somewhere inside those works, my younger self had left enough evidence to say, I was here. A tremor moved through my body, not weakness, release. I want to say something to every woman who has ever been reduced to what others found convenient. I leaned closer to the microphone. You are still the author of what your hands have made, even if someone else signed the paper, even if someone else took the photograph, even if your own family forgot to ask who you were before you became useful to them. The applause came suddenly, but I lifted one hand gently. Please, I said, let me finish. The room quieted again. I looked directly at Lauren then, and to the people who love us, but do not see us clearly. My daughter raised her eyes. I felt the whole room watching that invisible thread between us. You may not mean to harm us, but dismissal does not need bad intentions to leave a scar. Lauren's face crumpled. I swallowed hard. If you are blessed enough to still have your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, your older neighbor, your teacher, ask her who she was before you decided who she is. Ask what she gave up. Ask what dreams she folded away. Ask what truth she stopped telling because nobody made room for it. My voice broke slightly. And if she answers, believe her before a museum has to. That was the sentence that undid my daughter. Lauren bent forward, covering her face with both hands. Her shoulders shook. Patricia, sitting beside her, reached awkwardly toward her, but Lauren did not seem to notice. I turned back to the audience. I am grateful tonight. Deeply grateful. But I would be lying if I said this kind of recognition gives back everything. It does not. It cannot return the years. It cannot place my name in my daughter's childhood where it should have been. It cannot make my younger self less lonely. I breathed in. But it can do something. I looked toward the gallery again. It can tell the truth from now on. The room was silent, and sometimes, after a lifetime of being misnamed from now on, is enough to begin healing. For a moment, no one moved. Then the applause rose like thunder. People stood. Margaret was crying openly. Dr. Harris bowed his head. Daniel Brooks was not recording anymore. He was simply watching. I stepped back from the podium, overwhelmed by the sound. Dr. Harris approached and gently touched my shoulder. "Thank you," he whispered, but my eyes were on Lauren. She had stood too, though not with the others. She stood as if pulled by something painful and necessary. Her face was wet, her lips trembling, and all the polish she had worn into that room seemed to have fallen away. For one brief second, she looked like the little girl beneath my work table. Then she mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." I did not nod. Not because I did not hear her. Because an apology spoken from the audience was only the beginning, not the repair. I walked off the stage slowly while the applause continued around me. At the bottom of the steps, Lauren moved toward me. "Mom," she whispered. I stopped. Her eyes searched my face, desperate, frightened, ashamed. "I didn't know how much I didn't know," she said. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I answered with the truth I had waited 40 years to be strong enough to say. "No, Lauren, you didn't." And for once, I did not add anything to make it easier for her. Lauren followed me out of the auditorium like someone walking behind the consequences of her own life. The applause had faded, but I could still feel it in my bones. People stopped me gently as I moved through the hallway. A woman touched my arm and said my speech reminded her of her grandmother. A retired professor thanked me for restoring dignity to domestic memory work. A young museum intern, eyes shining, whispered that she wanted to become a curator because of women like me. Women like me. For decades, I had been treated as if there were no category for me except old, quiet, and useful. Now strangers were naming me with reverence. Lauren stayed close, but not too close. I could feel her wanting to interrupt, wanting to explain, wanting to reclaim some version of control. But every time she opened her mouth, she seemed to remember the room, the essay, the tears, the title on the wall. Margaret eventually guided us into a small side corridor near the staff offices. "There's a quiet room just here," she said softly. "You can rest for a few minutes before the reception continues." "Thank you," I said. Lauren stepped in after me before Margaret could close the door. "Mom, please. I need to talk to you." Margaret looked at me, asking without words whether she should stay. I shook my head gently. "It's all right." She hesitated, then said, "You'll be right outside." The door closed. The room was small, but elegant, with 2 upholstered chairs, a low table, a pitcher of water, and framed sketches on the walls. The noise of the gala became muffled behind the door like another world continuing without us. For a moment, Lauren and I simply stood there. She had cried enough that her makeup had softened around her eyes. Her hair, always perfect, had come loose near one temple. She looked tired in a way I had rarely seen. Not physically tired, spiritually cornered. "Mom," she said. I sat down before my knees could betray me. Lauren remained standing. "I don't even know where to start." "That may be the first honest thing you've said tonight." She flinched. I did not apologize. Her hands twisted together. I deserved that. I looked at her carefully. "This is not about what you deserve, Lauren. Not tonight." "Then what is it about truth?" She laughed once brokenly. I feel like I don't know what truth is anymore. No, I said. You know what it is. You just discovered it doesn't flatter you. Her eyes filled again. I didn't know about Dad. I know. I didn't know he took your work. I know. I didn't know that essay had anything to do with your exhibition. I know that too. She stared at me, desperate for forgiveness to arrive through those words. But I was learning, even at 68, that understanding someone's ignorance does not erase the injury their ignorance caused. I didn't know, she repeated. This time, I leaned forward. Lauren, how many times in your life did you not know because you never asked? Her mouth trembled. I let the question sit. She looked toward the floor. I thought Dad was the artist. Yes, he told me he was. Yes, and you never corrected him. I tried quietly. That was my mistake. She shook her head. Why didn't you tell me everything when I was older? Because by then you had already chosen what kind of mother you wanted me to be. Her head lifted. That's not fair, isn't it? Her face tightened, but she did not argue. I continued, calmer than I felt. You wanted me simple. You wanted me grateful. You wanted me to fit into the story where your father was brilliant and I was dependable. When I hinted at anything more, you acted as if I was being bitter. She covered her mouth with one hand. I remembered the 17-year-old Lauren rolling her eyes over her laptop, the college essay glowing on the screen, Michael's name woven through every paragraph, like he had built beauty from nothing. I remembered saying, "There are things about your father's work you don't know." And she had sighed, not cruelly, but with the impatience of a daughter who believed her mother's pain was an old song she did not want to hear again. Old resentments, she whispered now. So she remembered. Yes, I said. That's what you called them. She sat down across from me as though her legs had finally given out. I was 17, yes. And then you became 25, 30, 40. Tonight you told me not to embarrass you before you knew why a museum had invited me. She closed her eyes. I'm ashamed. You should be. The words came out quietly. Lauren opened her eyes, startled by their plainness. I had never spoken to her that way before. I had corrected her gently as a child, comforted her as a young woman supported her as an adult. But I had rarely allowed her to feel the full weight of disappointing me. Somewhere along the way, I had confused motherhood with cushioning every fall. I love you, I said, but I am ashamed of how you treated me. A tear slipped down her cheek. I thought I was helping you. No, I said. You thought I needed managing. She looked down at her hands. Maybe I did. That answer surprised me. She took a shaky breath. I manage everything. Rooms, clients, sponsors, language, stories. I thought if I could control how people saw us, nothing could hurt me. Us. She gave a painful smile. Me. I guess I mean me. There it was, a small crack in the performance, not enough to repair everything, but enough to let air in. I was embarrassed, she admitted. Not because of you exactly, because I was afraid people would see where I came from and decide I didn't belong. I studied her. You came from me. Her face crumpled again. I know. No, Lauren. You came from a woman who worked with her hands, made beauty from scraps, fed you, when there was not enough money, protected your childhood at the cost of her name, and still clapped for you in every room you entered. She sobbed once sharply. I know, she whispered. I know now. But you should have known before tonight. She pressed both hands to her face. I let her cry. For once, I did not cross the room to soothe her immediately. I did not say, it's all right. I did not pretend her tears were proof of repair. Tears can be the beginning of repentance, but they can also be a way to ask the wounded person to become the comforter. I was tired of comforting people through the pain they caused me. After a while, she lowered her hands. "What do I do?" she asked. The question was so small, I nearly softened. But I remembered the essay, the gray dress, the mother angle, the eye roll, the way she had stood between me and Daniel Brooks, as though my own voice needed supervision. "You start by not asking me to fix this for you." She nodded slowly. "You apologize," I said. "Not tonight in front of cameras, not with a statement, not with words crafted to make you look self-aware. You apologize when you understand what you are apologizing for." "I'm sorry, Mom. I believe you feel sorry." She swallowed. "That's not the same." "No. Feeling sorry is about your pain. Apologizing well is about mine." The room went quiet. Outside, laughter rose briefly from the reception hall, then faded. Lauren wiped her face with the heel of her hand, no longer caring what her makeup looked like. "I wrote that essay because I wanted people to take me seriously," she said. "I thought if I sounded tough enough, intellectual enough, I could separate myself from anything people dismissed as sentimental. And you used women like me as the thing to separate yourself from." She nodded. Yes. That single word cost her something. I could see it. I leaned back, suddenly exhausted. "I have spent years living in your house, as if I should be grateful for whatever space you gave me." Her eyes widened. "Mom, I never wanted you to feel that way, but I did. And you benefited from not noticing." She looked stricken. I continued because if I stop now, I might never say it again. "I will not go back to that room and become smaller after tonight. I will not hide my sewing basket because it clutters your aesthetic. I will not let you dress me like an apology. I will not be introduced as a sweet little mother who used to be creative in little ways." Lauren whispered, "I said that." "Yes, I hate that I said that." "So do I." She nodded, crying again, but quietly this time. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know." Fear crossed her face. "Are you leaving?" I looked toward the door. A week earlier, that question would have filled me with anxiety. Where would I go? Could I afford a place? Would Lauren feel abandoned? Would people think I was ungrateful? Now the question felt different. It felt like a door. I think I said slowly, "I need to stop living where I am tolerated." Lauren went still. "Mom, I am not saying this to punish you. I am saying it because tonight reminded me that I had a life before your house, and I may still have one after it." Her lips trembled. "I don't want to lose you." I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, wounded, prideful daughter. "You already lost the version of me who needed your approval to take up space." She bowed her head. "I let the truth rest between us." Then I added softer, "But you have not lost your mother." She looked up quickly, hope flashing through her tears. "Not if you are willing to meet me as a woman, not just manage me as an old parent." "I want to," she whispered. "Then begin there." A knock came at the door. Margaret's voice followed. "Mrs. Carter, Dr. Harris is ready when you are." I stood smoothing the front of my navy dress. Lauren stood too, but she did not reach for my elbow this time. She did not guide me, correct me, or tell me how to walk back into the room. She simply stepped aside. It was a small thing, but after a lifetime of being directed, even small space can feel like freedom. When we returned to the reception hall, the room no longer felt the same. The chandeliers were still bright. The wine still sparkled in tall glasses. The string quartet still played something elegant near the staircase, but something invisible had shifted. Earlier, I had walked through that museum as Lauren's aging mother, a woman she hoped would remain quiet enough not to disturb the evening. Now people stepped aside when I passed, not because I demanded it, but because they understood I carried a story larger than the room. Lauren walked beside me in silence. For the first time that night, she did not guide my elbow. She did not tell me where to stand. She did not warn me who was important. She simply stayed near me as if unsure whether she had the right to do even that. Dr. Harris introduced me to several board members, but I barely remember their names. They spoke kindly. They praised the exhibition. They said words like, "Landmark Dr. Harris introduced me to several board members, but I barely remember their names." They spoke kindly. They praised the exhibition. They said words like landmark restoration and historic correction. I thanked them, but my mind kept drifting to the small black purse under my arm. Inside it was the faded photograph, and beneath that photograph, folded behind a handkerchief, was something Lauren had not yet seen. A copy of a letter from my divorce attorney. I had not planned to bring it. That morning, while Lauren was upstairs preparing for the gala, I had opened the bottom drawer and found the old folder where I kept documents too painful to revisit. I told myself I was only looking. Then I saw the letter yellowed, at the edges still marked with the attorney's letterhead, from 1989. I slipped it into my purse before I could lose courage. Now, after everything revealed in the gallery, I knew why. Some truths need evidence, not because they are untrue without it, but because the people who hurt us have trained themselves not to hear our voices alone. Lauren stood beside a marble column, staring at the exhibition entrance as guests moved in and out. "Lauren," I said. She turned quickly. "Yes, come with me." She followed without question. That alone almost broke my heart. We walked down a quieter hallway away from the noise of the reception past framed donor portraits and a glass case holding antique weaving tools. At the end of the hall was a bench beneath a tall window overlooking the dark museum courtyard. I sat down. Lauren sat beside me, leaving careful space between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then I opened my purse. Lauren watched my hands. I took out the faded photograph first and handed it to her. She held it carefully as if afraid it might accuse her. In the picture, I was young, standing in front of the river remembers indigo on my hands, hope in my eyes. Lauren touched the edge of the photograph. "You look so happy." She held it carefully, as if afraid it might accuse her. In the picture, I was young, standing in front of the river remembers indigo on my hands, hope in my eyes. Lauren touched the edge of the photograph. "You look so happy," she whispered. "I was tired," I said. "But yes, I was happy." She looked closer. "Is that my bottle on the table?" I smiled faintly. "Yes, you were asleep in the next room. Not for long, probably. You hated naps." A small, broken laugh escaped her. "I don't remember that kitchen." "You were very little." "I remember the work table," she said slowly. "A big one, near a window." My breath caught. Yes, and spools of thread in old coffee cans. I looked at her. For the first time that night, memory was not only mine. She pressed the photo to her lap. "I thought I made that up." "No," I said. "It was real." Her eyes filled again. "I lost it." "No," I said. "You were a child. You did not lose it. The adults around you buried it." She looked at me with pain and gratitude tangled together. Then I took out the letter. Her expression changed. "What's that?" "A copy of something I should have shown you years ago." Her hands tightened around the photograph. I unfolded the paper slowly. The creases were soft from age. The ink had faded but remained readable. "It's from my divorce attorney," I said. "His name was Robert Klein. He wanted me to pursue a formal claim against your father for misattribution and unlawful sale of creative property." Lauren swallowed. I handed it to her. She read the first lines silently. Then her lips parted. The letter explained what I had forgotten I once had in writing, that my attorney believed we had grounds to challenge Michael's ownership claims, that several early witnesses could testify I had created the works, that the Chicago sale could be contested, that the case might become public expensive and emotionally damaging, that custody tensions could worsen if Michael retaliated. Lauren's eyes moved down the page. Then she reached the final paragraph. "Mrs. Carter, if you decline to pursue legal action at this time, please understand that doing so may allow Mr. Carter's public claim to harden into the accepted record. I understand your stated concern for your daughter's emotional well-being and your desire to avoid exposing her to a prolonged public dispute. This decision is yours alone, but I urge you to consider the long-term cost of silence." Lauren stopped reading. Her breathing changed. She looked at me. "You gave it up because of me." I shook my head. "Not because of you. For you. There is a difference." Her tears fell onto the paper, and she quickly lifted it away, afraid to stain it. "I was 8. Yes. I loved him. Yes. You thought fighting him would hurt me. I knew it would." Lauren closed her eyes. For years, she had admired Michael Carter from the safe distance of selective memory. He had been charming when he wanted to be especially with her. He sent birthday gifts, took her to restaurants, told stories about gallery openings and important people. I never stopped him from seeing her. I never corrected every half-truth he fed her. I told myself I was keeping poison out of her childhood. But poison does not disappear because we refuse to name it. Sometimes it waits until the child is grown and calls itself history. Lauren opened her eyes again. "I built my career on him," she whispered. I said nothing. My college essay, my internships, my first gallery job. I used his name, his story. I told people I grew up around serious art because of him. Her voice cracked. "And the whole time it was you?" "Not the whole time," I said gently. "Your father did have talent for business. He had vision for presentation. He knew how to enter rooms, but he stole the work." "Yes." She covered her mouth. I repeated his theft. That sentence hung between us. I did not rescue her from it. She looked at the letter again, then at the photograph, then back at me. "When Daniel mentioned my essay, I wanted to disappear," she said. "But this is worse. Mom, I didn't just misunderstand you. I benefited from misunderstanding you." The truth had finally reached its deepest place. I nodded slowly. "Yes." She flinched, but she did not look away. "I used the version of you that made my life easier," she said. "The quiet mother, the sentimental mother, the mother who didn't challenge the story I preferred." Her voice became smaller. "And then I judged you for becoming small." My throat tightened. Outside the window, the courtyard lights glowed softly over stone paths and winter bare trees. I could see our reflections in the glass, my silver hair, her bowed head, the letter between us like a bridge neither of us yet knew how to cross. Lauren folded the letter carefully and handed it back. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "What?" "To know the truth, this late and still have you sitting beside me." I looked down at my hands. They were old hands now, veins raised, knuckles swollen, nails trimmed short, hands that had stitched grief-packed lunchboxes, signed divorce papers, held back truth, and still reached for my daughter's fevered forehead when she was sick. "Love is not always about deserving," I said. But access to someone's heart can change. She looked at me frightened. I want to make it right. You cannot make the past right. I know. You can only decide whether you will keep profiting from the lie. Her face steadied. I won't. I studied her. That will cost you? She nodded. I know. You may lose clients. I know. People may call you hypocritical. I am hypocritical. Her honesty surprised me. She wiped her cheek. I need to correct the essay publicly. Not tonight, not as damage control, but properly. I need to say I was wrong. Yes, I said. And I need to tell people whose legacy I actually came from. I looked at her for a long moment. That is not yours to use as a new brand. She winced, but nodded immediately. You're right. If you speak about me, you speak with permission, and you speak carefully. I understand. I was not sure she fully did, but for the first time, she wanted to. That mattered. The reception noise swelled in the distance. Someone laughed. Someone called my name from the hall, then lowered their voice when they saw us on the bench. Lauren looked at the photograph one more time. Can I keep a copy of this? Someday, I said. She nodded, accepting the boundary. That small acceptance told me more than any dramatic apology could have. I put the letter and photograph back into my purse. Then Lauren whispered, What happens with us now? I looked through the window at the courtyard, at the reflection of two women still sitting side by side after a truth strong enough to split families. We begin, I said, by not pretending tonight fixed us. She nodded. And then you learn who I am without needing me to become useful to your guilt. She began crying again, but quietly. This time, I reached over and placed my hand over hers. Not to erase what had happened, not to comfort her out of accountability, only to remind both of us that the truth had not destroyed love. It had simply removed the lies love could no longer carry. The next morning, my face was on the internet. I found out because Lauren came downstairs before 7, still in the same sweatpants she had worn after we got home from the museum, holding her phone like it had become something dangerous. Mom, she said from the kitchen doorway. I was sitting at the table with coffee, my navy dress folded over the chair beside me. I had slept only 2 hours, maybe 3. My body felt hollowed out, but not empty. More like a room after old furniture has been removed, echoing because space has finally appeared. What is it? I asked. Lauren placed the phone on the table. The headline read, Lost Textile Artist, Tiffany Carter, Restored to American Craft History after decades of misattribution. Beneath it was a photograph of me standing at the podium, one hand on the microphone, the museum sign glowing behind me. My name looked strange there too. Not as strange as it had on the gallery wall, but close. I scrolled slowly. Daniel Brooks had published the piece before dawn. It was not cruel, but it did not soften the truth. He wrote about the exhibition, the evidence Michael Carter's misattribution, the recovered works, the hidden initials, the legal letter, the testimonies. He wrote about my speech. He also wrote about Lauren's essay. I stopped when I reached that paragraph. Lauren stood very still. I'm in it, she said. Yes. He didn't make me sound evil. No, but he didn't protect me either. I looked up at her. That was not his job. She nodded, swallowing. For once, she did not argue. By 9 o'clock, 2 more articles had appeared. By noon, a local television station requested an interview. By evening, the museum's official video of my speech had been shared thousands of times. Comments poured in from women I would never meet. My mother was a quilter, and nobody called her an artist. My grandmother made memory cloths after my grandfather died. I wish I had asked my mother more before she passed. Tiffany Carter deserves every flower. I read until I could not see through tears. Not all attention was gentle, of course. Some people wanted a villain more than a truth. Michael's name trended briefly in certain art circles. Old colleagues issued careful statements. A retired gallery assistant claimed she had always suspected the attribution was wrong, though she had never said so when saying so might have mattered. That is the way courage sometimes behaves in hindsight. It arrives well-dressed after the danger has passed. By the end of the week, the museum announced a formal correction of all catalog records connected to the 12 recovered works. Dr. Harris called me personally. "We are revising the permanent archive," he said. "Your name will be restored in all digital and physical records. We are also contacting institutions that may hold related pieces." I sat on the edge of my bed while he spoke. My small guest room seemed even smaller now. "That sounds like a great deal of work," I said. "It is overdue work." There was that word again. Overdue. He continued. "The board has also approved a national traveling exhibition. Washington first, then Baltimore, Atlanta, Chicago, and possibly Los Angeles." I gripped the phone. "Traveling. Yes. The River Remembers will travel under your name. My name." I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the house, Lauren was on a call, her voice low and strained. She had spent the last 2 days dealing with professional consequences. The Ellison Foundation removed her from the media team to avoid distraction. 2 clients postponed contracts. 1 gallery director sent a short email saying they needed to reassess alignment. Lauren did not show me those messages at first. I knew anyway. I knew from the way she sat at the kitchen island, staring at her laptop without typing. I knew from the way she stopped using her confident voice on calls. I knew from the way she flinched every time her phone buzzed. On the 3rd day, she came to my room and knocked. Actually knocked. "Come in," I said. She opened the door but did not step inside until I nodded. "Another small thing, another new respect. I need to tell you something," she said. I set down the sweater I was folding. "All right, I lost the Ellison account. I had expected it but still felt a mother's ache." "I'm sorry," I said. She shook her head quickly. "Don't be. I mean, it hurts. I'm scared, but I understand why." She sat in the chair near the dresser, the one usually covered with laundry. "I also sent an email to my editor at Cultural Frame. The magazine that published your essay." "Yes." She took a breath. "I asked them to attach an editorial note saying my views have changed and that I'm preparing a formal response. Not a defense, a correction." I watched her carefully. "That is a start." She nodded. "I also told them the essay caused harm. Did you mention me? I said I would not discuss your personal story without your permission." That surprised me. She gave a sad little smile. "I heard you. For a moment, I saw not redemption, but effort. And effort, I was learning, matters when it does not demand applause." "I'm glad," I said. Lauren looked around my room then. Really looked. At the narrow bed, the old lamp, the boxes stacked near the closet, the sewing basket tucked beside the dresser, as if it needed permission to exist. Her face tightened. "Mom," she said quietly, "I hate that this is the room I gave you." I followed her gaze. For months, I had tried to convince myself the room was enough. Warm, safe, practical. Many women had less. I had told myself gratitude should silence discomfort. But dignity is not the enemy of gratitude. "It was the room you had," I said. "No," she said. "It was the room I thought suited the size of your life." The truth of that hurt both of us. She wiped her cheek. "I'm sorry." This time the apology sounded different, Less like panic, more like understanding. I know, I said. A week later, Dr. Harris invited me back to the museum to discuss the traveling exhibition. Lauren offered to drive me, then stopped herself. I can drive you if you want, she said. Or I can call a car. Or you can choose. I almost smiled. It'll take a car. She nodded. No wounded look, no guilt, no argument. That was how I knew something real had begun. She was learning that my independence was not a rejection of her. At the museum, I signed preliminary agreements with the museum's legal team. They were careful, respectful, almost too respectful. After years of having my name removed from papers, seeing it placed at the center of them made my hands shake. Artist Tiffany Carter. Creator rights acknowledged. Consulting role approved. Exhibition honorarium. Honorarium. Money had never been the heart of the wound, but I will tell the truth, being paid mattered. Not because it could buy back the past, but because unpaid women are too often told their sacrifice was noble by the people who benefited from it. Margaret walked me through conservation plans. Some pieces needed stabilization. Others required climate-controlled transport. She asked my opinion on thread color lighting label language community context. My opinion, not as a courtesy, as authority. At one point, she showed me a draft wall text that read, Tiffany Carter assisted in the development of community-based textile memorials. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I picked up a pen and crossed out assisted in the development of. I wrote created. Margaret smiled. Much better, she said. By the time I returned to Lauren's townhouse that evening, I had made a decision. Lauren was at the kitchen table with her laptop closed, waiting. How did it go? She asked. Well, I'm glad. I sat across from her. I'm going to move. Her face went pale, but she did not interrupt. I continued. Dr. Harris told me the museum has a visiting artist residency apartment available for 6 months while we prepare the traveling exhibition. It's small, but it has good light. After that, I'll decide what comes next. Lauren's eyes filled, but she held herself steady. Okay, she whispered. That single word contained grief, fear, respect, and love, trying not to become control. I'm not leaving you, I said. She nodded, tears slipping down. You're leaving the room. Yes. She laughed through her tears, then covered her mouth. I deserve that. No, I said gently. You need to learn from it. That is different. Moving took less time than I expected. Most of what mattered fit into boxes, my clothes, my mother's scissors, the sewing basket, old photographs, the legal folder, a few books, my navy dress. Lauren helped carry things to the car, but she asked before touching each box. When she picked up the sewing basket, she held it with both hands. Is this your mother's? I looked at her, surprised. Yes, she swallowed. It's beautiful. For years, that basket had been clutter to her. Now she saw it. Not fully, perhaps, but more. The museum apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building used for visiting fellows. It had tall windows, a modest kitchen, a wooden desk, and morning light that fell across the floor like a blessing. When I set my sewing basket near the window, something inside me settled. Lauren stood in the doorway. It suits you, she said. I looked around. No, I said softly. It gives me room. I will decide what suits me. She nodded. The consequences of that gala continued. Lauren's career did not collapse, but it changed. Some doors closed. Others opened only after she did the uncomfortable work of public correction. She published a response to her old essay naming the harm in her thinking without centering herself as the victim. Some people praised it. Some called it convenient. She accepted both without asking me to defend her. That was growth, not perfection. Growth. As for me, the exhibition began selling out timed entry tickets. Schools requested lectures. Universities asked for recorded interviews. A foundation offered funding to document community textile histories led by older women artists. My name traveled farther in 6 weeks than it had in 40 years. But the strangest justice was not fame. It was waking up in a room of my own, making coffee in silence, opening the window, and knowing no one in the house wished I would be smaller. One morning, I stood before a new piece of fabric stretched across a frame. For a long time, I only looked at it. Then I threaded a needle. My hands were slower now. The arthritis did not disappear because the world had finally clapped. But when I pushed the needle through the cloth, I felt something I had not felt in years. Not recognition, not even victory. Return, and that more than any headline felt like justice. 4 months later, I stood in the Baltimore Museum of Community History, watching a little girl point at my work. She could not have been more than 6. Her hair was braided with yellow beads, and she wore a red coat too warm for the crowded gallery. Her grandmother held her hand while they stood before the river remembers, now installed beneath a soft arc of light that made the silver thread shimmer. "Grandma," the girl whispered, "is that a blanket?" Her grandmother smiled. "No, baby, that is a story." I turned away before they could see my tears. By then, the traveling exhibition had already become more than anyone expected. Washington sold out. Baltimore extended dates twice. Atlanta requested additional community programming. Chicago, the city where the river remembers had disappeared into a private collection, planned a special panel on misattribution and women's labor. My name traveled with the work now, not hidden in repair folds, not whispered by families, printed, spoken, recorded. Tiffany Carter. Some mornings, I still woke in the museum apartment, expecting to hear Lauren moving around upstairs in her townhouse. Then sunlight would fall across my desk, across my mother's sewing basket, across the new textile piece I had begun, and I would remember I was in my own space, my own life, my own name. Healing, I learned, does not feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like making coffee without shrinking. Lauren and I spoke every Sunday. At first, the calls were careful, too polite, full of pauses where old habits waited to see if they were welcome. She asked about the exhibition. I asked about her work. She told me about the correction essay she had published and the criticism that followed. Some people praised her accountability. Others called it opportunistic. A few former clients never returned. She did not ask me to comfort her through that. That was new. Once she said, "I keep wanting to explain myself." "And do you?" I asked. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But less." "Good." She laughed softly. "You're tougher now." "No," I said. "You're hearing me more clearly." There was a silence on the line. Then she whispered, "I deserve that." "No," I corrected. "You needed it. We were learning a new language, not the language of mother and child where one gives endlessly and the other receives without noticing. Not the language of guilt either, where every conversation becomes a courtroom. We were learning the language of 2 adult women telling the truth carefully enough not to turn it into a weapon. The night of the Baltimore opening, I did not expect Lauren to come. She had called 2 days earlier and said she had a work conflict. I told her I understood, and I did. Part of me was relieved. Public events still made our relationship tender. I wanted that evening to belong to the work, not to the wound. But halfway through the reception, while I was speaking with a group of retired teachers near the entrance, I saw her. Lauren stood just inside the gallery doors. No cream blazer, no sharp publicist smile, no phone in her hand. She wore a simple dark green dress and held a small bouquet of white tulips wrapped in brown paper. Her hair was pulled back loosely. She looked nervous, almost young. When our eyes met, she did not rush toward me. She waited. That mattered. I finished my conversation, thanked the teachers, and walked toward her. "Hi, Mom," she said. "Hi, Lauren." She looked around the gallery, taking in the crowd. The labels, the children sitting on the floor near a teaching station, the older women touching their own sleeves as they read about donated cloth in memory. "It's beautiful," she said. "Yes," I answered. "It is." She held out the tulips. "I brought these for you, not for cameras, not for anyone else to see, just for you." I accepted them. "Thank you." Her eyes glistened, but she did not cry. Or maybe she had learned that not every feeling needed to become my responsibility. We walked together through the gallery. She stopped before Names for the Morning and read every line of the label. She stood before the display case containing my hidden initials and did not speak. She watched a video interview where I described listening to families before stitching their memories into cloth. Then we reached The River Remembers, the same piece that had changed everything. For a long time, Lauren only looked. Finally, she said, "I used to think important art." She said, "I used to think important art had to feel distant." I waited. She continued, "I thought seriousness meant removing emotion. I thought if something came from grief, family motherhood, church basements, kitchens, it had to be defended before it could be respected, had to feel distant." I waited. She continued, "I thought seriousness meant removing emotion. I thought if something came from grief, family motherhood, church basements, kitchens, it had to be defended before it could be respected." Her voice shook. I was wrong. I looked at the silver thread moving under light. "Yes," I said, "you were." She nodded. No defense, no explanation, just acceptance. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. I wrote something, she said quickly. "Not a statement, not for publishing, just for you. But I can read it only if you want me to." I studied her face. There was fear there, but not the old fear of embarrassment. This was the fear of someone offering truth without knowing whether it would be received. "All right," I said. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. "Mom," she began, then stopped. She swallowed and tried again. "Mom, I am sorry for the years I confused your silence with smallness. I am sorry for every time I corrected your clothes, your voice, your stories, your presence, because I was afraid of what other people would think. I am sorry that I admired rooms that excluded you and then asked you to behave properly inside them." Her voice broke, but she kept reading. "I am sorry I used the word sentimental like an insult when what I meant was that your work made people feel things I did not yet have the courage to respect. I am sorry I let Dad's version of history make me proud and your quiet version make me impatient. I am sorry I rolled my eyes at you in the very room where strangers were preparing to honor what I should have honored first." I looked down. The tulips trembled in my hands. Lauren continued softer now. "I do not expect this apology to fix us. I do not expect your forgiveness to return me to the place I had before. I only want you to know that I see you now, not because the museum told me to, not because the world applauded, but because I finally understand that you were never small. I was looking at you through a story that made me feel bigger." She lowered the paper. Tears slipped down her cheeks. That's all. The gallery moved around us. Footsteps, murmurs, a child laughing somewhere near the education table. The low hum of people encountering memory. I wanted to say many things. Part of me wanted to tell her it was all right the way mothers often do, even when it is not. Part of me wanted to gather her into my arms and erase the trembling from her face. Another part of me, the part that had learned to breathe in my own apartment with morning light on the floor, knew that forgiveness did not require me to pretend the scar was gone. So I said the truest thing I could. I forgive you, Lauren. Her eyes closed and a sob escaped her. Then I added, but we will not go back. She opened her eyes. I held her gaze. I will not go back to being managed. I will not go back to living in the room that matched your misunderstanding of me. I will not go back to swallowing my history so you can feel innocent. She nodded through tears. I know. If we move forward differently. I want that, she whispered. So do I. And I did. Not because she deserved instant restoration, not because blood erases harm, but because I had not fought so hard to recover my name only to let bitterness rename my heart. We stood there, mother and daughter, before the river I had stitched from other people's memories, finally making room for our own. After a while, Lauren said, "Can you show me where you hid the initials?" I smiled. "Come closer." She stepped beside me, not in front of me, not pulling me back, not arranging me for anyone's view. Beside me. I pointed toward the lower left corner where the repair fold had once concealed 2 tiny blue letters. TC, I said. Lauren leaned in. They're so small. Yes, but they survived. I looked at the work at the thread at my daughter at the name on the wall. Yes, I said. They did. That evening, after the guests left and the gallery quieted, I stayed behind for a few minutes alone. Lauren waited near the doors, giving me space without being asked. I stood before The River Remembers and thought of the woman I had been at 29 stitching initials into a fold because she was afraid no one would ever know. I wished I could tell her what I knew now. That truth can sleep for years and still wake. That a woman's work does not lose its worth because someone else takes the credit. That children may misunderstand us, but we must not spend our whole lives becoming smaller to make their misunderstanding comfortable. And that sometimes justice arrives not as revenge, but as a room full of people finally saying your name correctly. I walked out of the gallery with my daughter beside me and my own footsteps steady beneath me. For the first time in a long time, I was not waiting to be seen. I was simply living as the woman I had always been. This story is not only about art museums or a daughter who learned the truth too late. It is about the quiet ways people are erased inside their own families. Sometimes a mother gives so much of herself that her children begin to mistake her sacrifice for emptiness. Sometimes an older woman's silence is not weakness, but a history too painful to keep explaining to people who never cared enough to listen. Tiffany Carter's journey reminds us that every person carries a life before the role we assign them. Your mother was someone before she was your mother. Your grandmother had dreams before she became old in your eyes. The women who cook mend, remember birthdays, keep family peace, and sit quietly in the corner may have survived battles no one ever thanked them for. But the story also reminds us that healing is possible when truth is finally allowed to stand in the room. Forgiveness does not mean going back to the same old place. Love without boundaries can become another form of self-erasure. Real healing begins when respect replaces control, when apology comes without excuses, and when the person who is hurt no longer has to shrink to keep the peace. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt unseen by your own family? Or have you ever discovered too late how much someone sacrificed for you? I would love to know where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. If you believe stories like this matter, please like this video, subscribe, and stay with this community for more emotional stories about truth, family, justice, and healing.